Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. We're going to be talking about DC books for, I guess we're in June already. Man, this year's just been flying by. Yeah, so the week of June 1st, Tuesday, June 1st, 2021. And I got to say, here's another week where DC's putting out more good than bad. So we're further putting that sort of bad taste of Future State behind us, which is a very, very good thing. And I've been talking to more and more creators recently, just kind of the nature of the comic industry, right? Like everybody kind of gears up for summer. It's when school's out and all that. And granted, the pandemic has kind of thrown that all out of whack. And summer used to also be convention season. Remember that, Rocky, when we didn't have conventions year round?
Yeah.
It used to start like in late April and go until like, September. And now they start, they're just every weekend now. So obviously not a lot of in-person conventions yet, but my point is the comic industry is still sort of on that cycle. So, big summer events and books coming out. And I've had more and more creators reaching out to me, wanting to come on the show and all kinds of announcements, which is great. But it just means I've been talking to more and more creators lately. And a lot of the ones that I'm talking to at DC, there's more optimism, much more optimism now than, say, September of last year when we know the layoffs had been announced. Most of them hadn't taken place yet. They were still coming. And it was just sort of we don't know what's next sort of thing. And, I'm still not 100% on board with some of the decisions they've made. But I got to say that a lot of these books, we're hitting the third issue, fourth issue on some of these. And they're really starting to get their rhythm.
Yeah.
So
they're finding that's exactly right. They're getting their groove. DC is slowly getting a little bit of a groove back on some of the narrative here. And when you consider how convoluted Future State was, I think that I think they're doing a pretty good job of making the best of it and surprising us with some surprisingly really interesting narratives. So overall, it's impressive. Yeah.
Yeah, and the last thing I want to mention before we kind of dive into the books for this week is the other part of it is I was pretty harsh and maybe overly so, not necessarily about the quality of Future State, because I did think overall it was kind of below average, but I called out a lot of the creators on just not attacking them personally, but I feel like it wasn't their best work. And we talked extensively about it in the Future State Spotlights, how it felt rushed. And so it may not have been indicative of their best work because it very well may have been rushed. Yeah. So, now we're seeing work from, people like Geoffrey Thorne, I'll name specifically because, I really disliked his Future State Green Lantern. This week's Green Lantern I thought was the best comic I've ever read that he's written. So, like we said, it's not just the stories and the narratives kind of finding their pace and their rhythm, but I think the creators as well, kind of getting their feet under them, because DC did have a huge influx of talent that hadn't worked there before. So last thing I'll mention before we dive in, hope everybody got a chance on Saturday to listen to my interview that I did with Jim Starlin about his recent project.
It was excellent, man. I loved it. It was a fantastic interview, man. It was so great hearing from him and his passion about Dreadstar and his new collaboration with the inker. What's the inker's name again? I forget her name.
Jamie Jameson.
Jamie, yeah, she was quite impressive too. Yeah, that was great. It was good to watch. I watched it on YouTube, your YouTube channel, not just the podcast. So.
Yeah, it's available either place, either any podcast platform or on the YouTube channel as well. The thing that's great about it is Jim. He's always so authentic. There's nothing politic about him. Not to say he calls anybody out or anything, but he just tells it like it is.
Yeah, he does.
He's always been that way. And some people say, oh, he's difficult to work with, and he's had that reputation at times where he's not wanted to work with Marvel because of editorial dictates or what happened. But here's the thing: it's because he's passionate about the story and he wants what's best for the story. So. I love Jim. He's amazing, and I think this is the third or fourth time I've interviewed him, and yeah, it's always a blast. So anyway, let's go ahead and dive into the books for this. We're going to start with Justice League number 62. Obviously, this is written by Brian Michael Bendis, and the art continues to be by David Marquez, colors by Ivan Placencia, letters by Josh Reed. I'll also go ahead and give the the credits for the backup, the Justice League Dark story, which I still feel like is deserving of its own title. It's so good.
It is.
Uh, yeah, Ram V is the writer. Xermanico is the artist. Romulo Fajardo Jr., one of Rocky's favorites, handles the colors, and Rob Lee's on letters. So just to catch everybody up, when Bendis started his Justice League run, it was all about this interdimensional being, Brutus, very powerful, who comes from the birth world of Mega Power, not a superhero, but a Mega Power, Naomi McDuffie. Basically, their world is post-apocalyptic. It's kind of falling apart. There are other factors, let's say, in play there, and it's just not a good place to be. And so Brutus, along with his allies, is looking for a new world to make his own, to conquer and rule over. And he made a couple incursions into our Earth, and the Justice League said, no, that's not going to happen. They tracked down Naomi. Naomi's been their gateway with help from the Barry Allen Flash to send everybody to this world where Brutus lives and try to stop him and make sure he doesn't come back. In this issue, we find out Flash made some miscalculations. He's very distraught that he screwed up the math, is what he tells Hippolyta. And apparently him screwing up the math and sending them to that world, I guess in a wrong sort of way, is contributing to the malfunctioning of their powers. And we see Naomi, she seems to be sort of fading out of existence, kind of a flashback to Back to the Future, I guess you'd say. Whereas Superman's powers are very limited. Conversely, Black Canary's scream has never been stronger. So yeah, they're challenged, let's say. But when when Flash realizes it's a mistake, around the same time Hippolyta makes an appearance at the Hall of Justice, sends her there. I guess he sends her there with the correct math because she seems as powerful as ever, and she helps the Justice League defeat Brutus. And they're about to make their escape when all of a sudden the real power of that world, the reason that apparently Brutus and his allies don't want to be there, shows up. Zumbado, who's this giant, almost anvil-fisted, we don't get a good look at him. He just shows up on kind of the last page. He looks like some kind of a purple Tron-esque anvil-fisted, maybe Darkseid, Doomsday Mongol, kind of very hulking figure in what looks to be a hoodie of all things. So it's not the best design. And I will also say, David Marquez's art, normally I really enjoy. This, speaking of rush, this felt a little rushed to me. It was a little messier than I'm used to seeing from him. And I wonder if this is one of those cases where, they're going straight from his digital pencils to color, and if he might not be one of those artists that does benefit from having an inker. But that's nitpicky. I mean, overall, the art is, very, very solid. I'd give it an 8 out of 10. What's not so solid is the story, especially when we get into the battle. And I get it. Like, Bendis wants to show off the spectacular art of David Marquez when it comes to doing splash pages and these dynamic battle scenes. He does a very good job, despite what I said earlier about, the technique of the lines, the layout, the storytelling, these little circular insets. It really conveys the action very well. But unfortunately, it makes because of, we got like 3, 4, 5, 6 double page spreads in a row.
Yeah.
That makes it really hard to have a narrative that's not choppy.
Yeah.
And that's exactly
Bendis has said that.
happened.
You make a good point. Bendis has said he's often bragged that he works with his artists. He writes for his artists, and I think it's quite clear here he probably did that just to allow David Marquez to show off his art.
Yeah, and I get that, and that's an admirable thing to do, but I think you got to split these up. We got to get a couple pages with some panels in here just to reestablish the flow of the story. So it's not that it's a bad story. I think the previous issue was better. It's not that it's the most original story either. I think this is, a very, very tropey story, and it still continues to kind of foreshadow Naomi saving the day at some point. I do like that Hippolyta really shines here. I like that Black Canary gets to really shine with her scream, her canary scream sort of amped up in power. So it's okay. It's, I didn't expect much from Bendis's Justice League run. It's been overall, I'll say, better than I thought it would be. But I think this is the weakest issue since the first in my in my opinion. And for once, it's not the dialogue, although the dialogue is, it's Bendis, so there's a lot of word balloons here. But it's not necessarily awkward dialogue. It's just maybe a little bit too much dialogue. But mostly it was just that middle section during the fight where it just felt really choppy for me. So it still continues to be okay. If somebody asked me, well, do you recommend it? I'd say this. I'd say if you're a fan of Bendis, then I think you'll enjoy it. If you're not a fan of Bendis, he still does all those things that probably make you not a fan of him.
That's exactly
right. And you can probably skip it. So, and I'll give Rocky a chance to talk about the main story, and then we'll dive into the backup. What do you think, Rocky?
Well, to be blunt here, at this point, I mean, you could pretty much cut and paste my criticisms and frankly yours as well for every Bendis story we've read. I mean, if I spoke in generic terms, you could cut and paste my review of this to any other Bendis JLA title so far. And the reality here is this here. The good thing is that David Marquez's art gets to shine, and we get the double page spreads are pretty cool. Are there too many of them in terms of the story? Yeah, probably. But I did enjoy seeing them. I love David Marquez's art. I remember Civil War 2. I had issues with the story of Civil War 2, which was also written by Brian Bendis and drawn by David Marquez. But I love the art on Civil War 2. It was just beautiful. I do think the line work here, I think you made some good observations there, but the line work here is not quite as smooth. Maybe a different inker David Marquez would benefit from maybe a better inker or finishes there. But still, this is great art. The dialogue is still a little bit odd. Barry Allen sounding like, I have a hard time.
Whiz.
What's that?
He's like, oh, gee whiz, I messed up the math.
Well, he says I sent them away on bad math. Well, actually, see, I don't know. Like, I don't know what that means because, first of all, I mean, there's so much wrong with the logic of this story. It's ridiculous. He didn't send them away on bad math. The math was right. Why? Because he sent them to the right place. So that's not even true. The math was for triangulation and sending him to the appropriate coordinates. That's exactly what he did. He sent him to the appropriate Earth. So I don't know why the math was wrong. The math was dead on. Unless he meant something else. He sent them away on bad math, meaning that he did the math. If he would have corrected the math, would that have changed the reality that they're all being poisoned by being in that reality? I mean, how would the math tell him that? That doesn't make any sense. Like, again, I'm sure I'm probably nitpicking here, but I'm actually not. This is not Barry Allen. If he actually clued in that sending them to that universe was killing them and poisoning them, he would not say the phrase, I sent them away on bad math. He would say, they're going to die, Hippolyta. We have to get them out of that universe now. But this is just Bendis' clever way of trying to be clever, trying to use his stupid dialogue again that makes no sense. It's unclear. It's ridiculous. Even the dialogue of Brutus here. Brutus's dialogue is like, Bendis always tries to shock the reader by imposing dialogue on new persons. Like, Brutus is supposed to be a big badass, but Brutus is, I guess, he reads like an average guy on the street. Oh, well, now I'm annoyed, at one point Brutus says. And just the way Brutus talks, it's like some guy on the street as opposed to some villain. There's never any heightened sense of brutality or villainy with Bendis' villains. Everyone's so conversational. They're all talking the same and sounding the same. And frankly, I sound the same every time I talk about Bendis because it's the same criticisms. But in any event, having said that, this is really dragging out the story. It's, again, we're going to get, I guarantee we're in we're third chapter now of this. We're going to get to the sixth chapter, and all this is going to be, of the next 3 issues, is a protracted battle with Zumbado, and we're still not going to know much about him. We're still not going to know much about the universe or his multiverse. You yourself said it. Now, they're not superpowers. They're mega powers. Bendis needs to have his own universe to do what he wants. So this is disconnected from the Omniverse and everything else until Bendis wants it to be connected. Then it will be. And it's just, it's frustrating from a story perspective. But thank God we got JL Dark to cushion the blow. But, having said that, you're right. If you're a Bendis fan, this is okay. This is actually better. This is the best Bendis has been This is better Bendis at DC than he has been for a while, so I'll give him that. But
Yeah, I agree.
yeah, but
Uh,
JL Dark, you
Go
want to
ahead.
talk about that?
Yeah,
All right.
yeah, no, yeah. Go ahead. Give us your thoughts on
Uh,
Justice League Dark.
oh, I love Justice League Dark because we're last issue with the Justice League Dark. Merlin, the villain Merlin, ended up at the Library of Babel, and he withdrew a book, and we didn't know what book he withdrew from the library, but the Justice League Dark, they're looking for Merlin because Merlin is trying to, I guess, sort of revitalize magic or ultimately revitalize magic to such an extent that he ends up doing what we know he does in Future State, which is, I'm not even sure what the hell it is, but he harkens back a new age of magic in which he controls. And what I really love about Justice League Dark, and sorry about here, I should maybe try to do two things at once here, but Merlin, pardon me, John Constantine, the Demon, and Zatanna, they're at the Library of Babel, and they're trying to figure out what books that Merlin may have withdrew from the library, but they got to find the librarian, but the librarian is because it's a magical place, can't be found. And so they come up with an ingenious way to attract the librarian, who is completely aware, because all the books that have ever been written at any point in time are in the library. And there's just a fantastic scene here of a breaking of the fourth wall. At one point, Ragman actually takes out a book, and it's the Justice League Dark. It's Ram V's. It's the writer's own notes in a booklet in this library. It's like and in this book reveals one of Zatanna's secrets, namely that every time she uses her powers, the Upside Down Man gains more and more control of her. So the Ragman knows her secret, and so that's an interesting little tidbit. And meanwhile, Zatanna, in order to attract the librarian, because the librarian is aware of every single page of all the words in all the books, she uses her magic and speaks backwards and adds an extra word to every single page of every book in the library, which attracts the librarian. And ultimately, the librarian then informs them which book the Upside Down Man, which book the Merlin withdrew. And the book that Merlin withdrew is called the Eternity Book, and it contains maps by an ancient cartographer, and it leads him to ancient Atlantis, where ultimately at the end we see Merlin in ancient Atlantis trying to wake up and to reignite some of the old magic, because Atlantis is where the first bastion of magic on Earth came into being. And so this is just wonderful. I love how many, it's just, you mentioned it last time when we reviewed Justice League, just how in a significantly fewer number of pages, we get double and triple the amount of character work and entertainment than we do in all the pages of Justice League. And there seems to be a better rapport between writer and artist. And, in this case, Ram V, I think it's a double-edged sword. Ram V just wants to tell a story, and it's Xermanico's job as the artist to draw that story. There's none of this, well, I'll write the story for my artist. I got a better idea. How about you just write your story, and if the artist is any good, he'll figure out a way to draw it, and just let that come to life on its own. And I just love this. I love the breaking of the fourth wall. Ram V continues to impress the hell out of me, and I'm running out of adjectives to describe my enjoyment of his writing.
Yeah, I agree. Disappointed once again that it's such a small installment, because we do get some great character moments. We get great character moments between John Constantine and Jason Blood, where I mentioned the fact that it's Jason Blood and not the Demon here is spectacular. I think we haven't gotten enough of Jason Blood over the years. It's always Etrigan. Yeah. Etrigan plays a big role in the Future State Justice League Dark story, so it does make sense that Jason Blood does have that knowledge, same knowledge that Etrigan has, but we're getting we're getting characterization, we're getting story of Jason Blood rather than the Demon. And I love that Constantine. You can tell there's no love lost there. They're in ways they're very similar. But I think one of the things that bugs Constantine about Jason Blood is, even though they are very similar, everybody calls Constantine and sort of believes that Constantine's sort of a bastard, right? Jason Blood is so similar, makes a lot of the same choices, but he doesn't have that same reputation. He's
Yeah.
much more liked, and I think there's a little resentment from Constantine on my part, or maybe I'm misreading that. But
Yeah.
again, great characterization. The things that we learn about Zatanna here, that there's a part of the upside down man within her, and the more she uses her magic, which if people weren't reading Justice League Dark before, maybe when it was its own title, maybe you weren't aware of that. So it's nice that Ram V reminds anybody who's coming on that's here for Bendis's Legion and is reading Justice League Dark, because hey, you paid for it, you might as well read it, and it's spectacular. So now you understand why she's so reluctant to use her magic. Every time she uses it, there's a chance that the upside down man's influence within her could grow. We get some good characterization of Ragman. So again, it's just it moves the narrative forward. As Rocky said, Merlin is in Atlantis. We get a great scene with Merlin walking on water. It's really, really spectacular storytelling where the characterization is there, but it doesn't take over the plot. The story is moving forward. It would be so easy, right? Or so understandable, I guess is the word I should use, with only 8 to 10 pages for Ram V to say, okay, well, this week I've got to focus on characterization. We're not going to really have time to move the narrative forward at all. In a very short amount of pages, he's still moving the narrative forward. He's still telling us the story, but we're still exploring the relationships of these characters. So yeah, it's a masterclass in how to write comics. And Ram V continues between this and Catwoman and the many deaths of Layla Starr. The guy's he's firing on all cylinders. Everybody should be paying attention to. So, all right, well, let's do Crime Syndicate number 4 next. This particular issue happens to sort of focus on Emerald Knight, who's the power ring equivalent, I guess, in the old or the original, I guess you'd say, Crime Syndicate. Power ring was the Green Lantern analog. Now we have Emerald Knight, John Stewart version of Green Lantern. The main story is written by Andy Schmidt. Kieran Mckeown does the pencils. Dexter Vines on inks. Steve Olaf does colors, and Rob Lee on letters. And then we have a backup story starring the Emerald Knight with sort of his origin. It's also written by Andy Schmidt with art by Brian Hitch and colors by Alex Sinclair. Rob Lee handles the letters on both. And we also got a lot more Alexander Luthor in this issue. So curious, Rocky, what did you think? You've been enjoying this series so far. What do you think of this issue?
It was okay. It was okay. I'm a little bit. I was a little bit confused. I actually think that John Stewart is potentially the most interesting character here. I was trying to get a handle on him this issue, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure if what writer Andy Schmidt has done is brilliant and is intentional, or if maybe he's missed the ball a little bit here. I'll take the blame myself. The whole point of John Stewart here is that he's a good cop. He was a good cop that this power ring, which is in this Emerald Knights, they're not Green Lanterns in Earth 3. In the Earth 3 universe, they're not called Green Lanterns. They're Emerald Knights, essentially. And they're the Owens. The Owens are basically kind of evil. And the Owens destroyed all the Starros. And they were hunting down the Starros. And, of course, the Crime Syndicate was formed in the last few issues they were attacked. Starros came to Earth looking for help against the Owens. And, of course, the Crime Syndicate kills the Starros. And now in this issue, they're cleaning up. They refuse to help, the ordinary citizens clean up the Starros. And meanwhile, Emerald Knight John Stewart here has declared martial law on Coast City. And he insists on protecting Coast City, even from the authorities. So the military is trying to come in there, but he's keeping the military out because he's declared himself almost like the protector of Coast City. Meanwhile, Johnny Quick and Atomica are taking over Keystone City, and they've caused chaos there. And Alexander Luthor is using that PR to his advantage, because he wants to use that as an example and tell the people of the Earth, look how bad these metahumans are. And he sends out a message to all the other metahumans, and he essentially creates sort of like a metahuman PR campaign where, you know, he's trying to recruit as many metahumans he can into his what we not now know will be the Legion of Justice. And meanwhile, Owlman knows what Alexander Luthor's up to, and Owlman has his own plan that he wants to get together with Donna Troy, Superwoman, and they want to recruit Ultraman, and they go to the Arctic to recruit Ultraman to get him on board. And it's, you know, there's a lot that happens here, and I got to give writer Andy Schmidt some credit. Now, I started off being a little bit wondering if maybe the characterization of John Stewart, I'm not sure if John Stewart's going to end up being a bad guy or not. John Stewart ends up joining the Legion of Justice, but I can't help thinking that John Stewart is just playing possum, that he's just going undercover. You know, they actually got Sinestro. Sinestro is actually, of course, a good guy here. Sinestro used to be an Emerald Knight himself, but then the Owens wiped out his planet, and so he became a Sinestro he created his own yellow ring, and he uses it for justice. But I can't help but think that this whole this idea of Emerald Knight joining the Legion of Justice to battle against ultimately the crime syndicate, I'm sure it's misdirection. I think it's probably fairly obvious, and it's telegraphed that at some point John Stewart's going to betray the Legion of Justice, betray Alexander Luthor. And but it's interesting. So Andy Schmidt actually has me questioning, you know, what is just John Stewart. Like, I want John Stewart because he's got a daughter, and he was a good cop, and he borrowed money from, I guess, the mob for his daughter's operations. His daughter Lisa was crippled, and she became healed he borrowed some money from the mob for I think to get some surgery for his daughter. And then they came to collect even after he paid them back. And just as they were coming in to collect, that's when the ring came on to him, and he killed the son of the person who he owes money to, apparently. And in any event, there's a lot of characterization. There's a lot of history that went into this issue, and boy, there's so much to build upon here for future stories. This is just a lot. It was a lot for me to process, and in the end, I liked it. And I'm openly wondering now, is John Stewart, I'm sure John Stewart's going to portray the Legion of Justice, but I'm curious. And I love that Donna Troy sexually teased Ultraman by telling him that she wants an heir, using her feminine wiles to lure Ultraman to join the crime syndicate. Because I think Ultraman could care less about the crime syndicate or about the metahuman war that Owlman talks about. He just wants to get laid. He just wants to be with Donna Troy. And yeah, so what's not to love? What's not to love, geez?
Owlman wants the power. That's, you know, and it's clear to Ultraman that that's why Owlman is there. But Ultraman wants it. You know, we're finally getting, because honestly, to this point, the first 3 issues, Ultraman's come across like a pretty big meathead, to be honest, and he does have some smarts, you know, and he hasn't been shown, but here he shows that he's a little more self-aware and aware of what's going on than previous in the series. And so, you know, when he asks, well, what do you want? You know, Donna Troy, you're super powerful. What could you want? Well, I want an heir. Oh, I can definitely help with that. So he's still very much full of himself. He's still Ultraman. He's still an egotist. But yeah, I did appreciate, you know, with just that one line or those few lines, him asking, well, what do you want, Donna Troy? It's some of the best characterization we've gotten of Ultraman so far. So I've been sort of back and forth on this series. It hasn't really captured me yet until this issue. I think this is the best issue of the series so far. And not necessarily because it spotlights John Stewart, although I do agree with Rocky that he is the most complex character of this new version of the crime syndicate. I do feel like his origin, or maybe the motivations of the character, the kind of the behind the scenes, the makeup of him, it feels like, despite the change we got with Power, or Superwoman rather, being Donna Troy rather than Diana Prince, that's sort of a superficial change. She still seems very much like the same character. Ultraman seems like the same character, if not a little dumber. Although, like I said, this issue may change that. Owlman seems the least changed. He's still brilliant. He's still, Batman, if Batman had no morality. But John Stewart's, it's very different, right? The original Power Ring was very much a coward, and the ring sort of takes him over, if you will. And it's really I mean, that's why they call him Power Ring. It's really the ring, and the man wielding it is just sort of a puppet. Well, that still seems to be the case, especially when we read the backup story here, the origin of Walls Closing In, the origin of the Emerald Knight, John Stewart here. But it's interesting, right? Rather than this Power Ring searching out somebody who's a complete coward, and is filled with fear, much like the Power Ring after the events. I think it was Forever Evil, when the Power Ring went and searched out Jessica Cruz because she was so filled with terror she couldn't even leave her house, agoraphobic or whatnot. This ring searches out John Stewart because he very much believes in law and order, maybe to the point of having some fascist tendencies. And it very well could be a product of, he's a person of color. He's seen the upbringing that has had the injustice of being a person of color growing up in our society, like firsthand, right? He's seen that. And so you can completely understand him wanting to right these injustices to the point of taking it too far.
Right.
I want to.
Yeah. Did you find that I thought that, I think maybe his one weakness, he fears losing his daughter, because there's that one scene where she says, "My father is dead. As far as I'm concerned, my father is dead." So somewhere along the line, he must have had a falling out with his daughter, Lisa. And I think he fears losing her. And I think that's his one weakness that makes him susceptible to the Power Ring, if I was to venture a guess.
Well, my guess is she can't forgive him. She fears him based on the fact that he killed those people right in front of her. And at that point, she's just like, "No, I don't recognize you anymore."
Yeah.
And his motivation. So he's gone from, okay, I finally have the power to right these injustices as I see them. And as we all know, we're all humans, we're all flawed, we're all imperfect. No one really has the right to truly judge another, because your judgment's going to be flawed, because as humans, we're inherently imperfect. And so he is trying, for his daughter's sake, to be perfect, to, save the planet, do whatever he can, blah, 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 in his mind, because he's trying to make up for what he did, show his daughter that, yes, I am still your father. I do still love you. I am still a good person. When really what he should do, if he wants to reconcile with her, is give it up, right? He needs to go the other direction. Instead of exercising more and more power to prove himself, he needs to give it up. But we know that the Power Ring exerts tremendous influence as well. So the Power Ring is taking advantage of those flaws he has as a human and exacerbating that as well. So again, it's great characterization. It's very different, going with a person that has fascist tendencies, hey, law and order and justice and whatnot, rather than going with fear. I completely expect this Legion of Justice to not survive the next issue, because I could be wrong. This is a new version. We had Andy Schmidt himself tell us this is a new version of Earth 3 and of the Crime Syndicate. But I don't know. I feel like that's something that's so classic to Earth 3, right? Is all the superpowered human beings are all villains, and the only one fighting against them is Alexander Luthor, who actually doesn't have any superpowers, but fights them through technology, wearing a battle suit or jetpack and laser guns and whatever. So wouldn't be surprised to see this Legion of Justice get their butts kicked, but I guess that remains to be seen. I fully expect John Stewart to change teams, as it were. The other thing that's just a little nitpick, I think overall the art is really great. I typically prefer a little lighter line. Kieran Mckeown uses pretty heavy lines, which is fine. That's his style. It just doesn't make my favorite. But The one thing that that does bug me is the mask of Jon Stewart. It looks like a butterfly on his face. I'm sorry, every time I look at it, I know it's supposed to be that symbol on his chest, which I never understood what that symbol was supposed to be. It's the same symbol
Yeah.
Power Ring had. Like, you understand the Green Lantern symbol. It looks like a lantern. I've never understood why there's this green X for the power, and honestly does look like a
It doesn't
butterfly.
look good.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but again, it's a minor nitpick. The only other thing I'll say is the colors are done by both Alex Sinclair and is it Romulo Fajardo Jr.? No, Steve Oliff. Sorry, a lot of green, which you would expect, and even Alexander Luthor's armor is green, which is kind of a throwback or a reminder that the battle armor of our Lex Luthor in our world is green as well. Well, I shouldn't say our world, but Earth One. So that just made even more green. But I thought the colors were handled well, the storytelling, the pacing, it's all done really, really well. Yeah, I thought this was the best issue so far. Andy Schmidt, I had said I wasn't sure. I wasn't relating to the characters. I wasn't sure. I was waiting for Alexander Luthor, and he said, "Oh, he'll be there." It shows up a lot more in issue 3, and he did. But I still didn't feel like he didn't really get a chance to shine. In this issue, he does. This is the first time we're really starting to get some characterization for Luthor, and he's kind of in a rock and a hard place. And I totally get that, and it feels very Earth 3, right? It feels very Crime Syndicate. And the last thing I'll say about the story is, so the Crime Syndicate is interesting as a concept because it's a very Silver Age concept. And what I mean by that is the classic stories of the Crime Syndicate being from that Silver Age era, it's all very much delineated good versus bad, right? Everything's black and white. It's not a world with a lot of gray. The Crime Syndicate members are bad, and Alexander Luthor is good. The story that Andy Schmidt is telling here, this is a much more chaotic world. There's a lot of gray area. Everything in this story feels kind of messy. The world feels kind of messy. And that could even go toward, hey, here in this issue, we're not sure, is Jon Stewart going to end up on the side of the Angels? Is he going to end up with the Crime Syndicate? Like, what's going on there? What's going on with this Justice Legion? Are they going to, or Legion of Justice rather, are they going to end up as good guys? Are they going to end up as bad guys? Because I mentioned, the world of Earth 3, we know there's all the metahumans are actually villains. Well, in talking about this story, which has been sort of messy and chaotic all this time, and that's been something I've been sort of pushing back against and why I haven't enjoyed it. But I think the realization I've come through in reading this issue, and I think it speaks to the great characterization Eddie Schmidt has done, I think it's purposely chaotic because it is messy. The world is messy. This is, I've probably been a little unfairly comparing it against the classic Crime Syndicate stories and thinking about how much I love those and looking at it with little rose-colored glasses and, nostalgia. This is a Crime Syndicate. This is a Earth 3 for a more modern time where things aren't so cut and dry. I think the world is chaotic. It is messy. There aren't any easy answers. And so I'll give kudos to Andy Schmidt. Whether he did that on purpose or not, that's what I'm finally picking up from this story. Is it a little messy? Are the motivations a little murky and unclear? Are we not sure where everybody stands? Yeah. And
I think he's clearly moving toward he's creating a status quo. That's really what he's doing. What he's doing is that, and I got mixed feelings about it, and I might be wrong on this, but I think that he's moving toward creating a status quo where everything is just the opposite, as opposed to the bad guys being on top. There's a very big difference between a world where the bad guys have won and maintain power versus just flipping, reversing everything. He seems to be approaching this like he's reversed everything. And that's not really what Earth 3 is. Not the classic Earth 3. Earth 3 is, no, the Crime Syndicate's up top. Everything. The world is below the Crime Syndicate. Above you, Ultraman is above you, and if you defy him, no matter who you are, world leader or a pauper, he will incinerate you with his heat vision. I like the classic Grant Morrison interpretation of Earth, of what he called it Earth 2 in the hardcover, but it was really Earth 3. But in any event, but I don't even mind this. If this is going to be a new status quo for Earth 3 that everything's flipped, but the bad guys slightly have the edge. I can live with that if we get some good stories out of it, and I think we are. And I like the Easter egg, so I don't mind this. I don't mind this, and I think that he's planted enough seeds that there's a lot of fun that we can have for not only this story that he's telling, but moving forward.
Yeah, and we do have 2 issues left, so
Yeah.
it wouldn't surprise me if the next issue, maybe it's going to be a spotlight on, I don't know, maybe Johnny Quick, who still seems like a hillbilly to me, and I don't know that I have that much interest in learning more about him, but maybe I need to. And then maybe issue 6 will be a big blowout battle where Ultraman does kind of throw down the gauntlet, right? Like join the crime syndicate or die.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll wait and see. All right, well, let's move on to Batman Catwoman number 4. I swear we were further along in the series than this. Did we miss
it's actually Batman Catwoman 5.
Oh, is it?
Well, we reviewed Batman Catwoman 4 already.
Did we? Because I don't remember.
Yeah, we did. They screwed up on our preview copies. They
Okay,
gave
'cause I
us.
thought
They screwed up. They gave us Batman Catwoman 4 on the covers for Batwoman.
Okay.
Batman Catwoman 4, but
Right.
the interior they gave us in the preview copies was the interior for issue 5, but they gave us the
Okay.
wrong covers.
Yeah, because okay. Yes.
So what we're going to read and what we're going to review is in fact issue 5.
Issue
but
5. Okay.
The covers
because
they
I could have
screwed up on.
sworn. Yeah, when I was looking, I'm like, this looks awfully familiar. I could swear, especially the Jim Lee. Yeah, especially the Jim Lee cover. I'm like, I could swear. But then I started reading. I'm like, no, we haven't, because we see Harley, old lady Harley, kind of show up on the doorstep of Wayne Manor, and crash her car and go inside and attack Catwoman. And so I thought, wait, no, I definitely would have remembered reading this. But in any event, written by Tom King, the art is by Clay Mann, colors by Tomeo More. I'm not sure who did the letters, and I don't see credits in here anywhere, so apologize to the letter. But yeah, I thought it was pretty fun. And Rocky was saying earlier, you could kind of cut and paste his criticism of Bendis' Justice League. I feel like you could do the same for me for Batman Catwoman. I'm really enjoying the story, but the 3 different timelines to me are a little sometimes hard to follow. And I meant to go back and look at my copies. I think they're in a stack over there behind me. But to look at my previous copies of Batman Catwoman, because I was noticing in this issue that the background of each of the timelines the coloring is a little different. And so I meant to go back, at least in this issue. So I meant to go back and look and see if those timelines tend to have those hues, right? Like the timeline I think it's the timeline that's in the middle is sort of greenish in hue. The timeline that's, I think the earliest timeline is sort of bluish. And then the current timeline, there is no overall hue. Which is with the older Selena Kyle and Harley Quinn showing up at Gotham Manor. So I meant to go back and look. I just didn't get a chance to. So if that's the case, and I just haven't noticed until now, for finally 5 issues in, shame on me. That's on me. But I will say that while they're all interesting, it does make, as I have said in the past, it does make it a little hard to follow at times. And it makes it one of those titles, which is often the case with the Tom King book, where you really got to have all 12 issues and read it all in one sitting to get the most out of it and to kind of understand it. Especially when you got 3 timelines going on. Because the other part of it is we do get some nice characterization and we do get some nice momentum on the stories. But just like with Justice League Dark, where I'm left feeling I need more, I need more. Like, I'd rather Tom was giving us like trade up, like you have 12 issues, right? So if you did each issue as one whole timeline and alternate between the 3, right? So issue 3 is the early, issue 2 is the middle, issue 3 is the latest, and then just continue that pattern, then you'd basically end up with 4 issues of each timeline. So we're sort of getting that because each issue has a third of each timeline, but it's like you're just start to get into reading what's going on in a certain timeline, and then it changes. And so it's
Yeah.
hard to sink your teeth into the story and to feel invested in the story, because as soon as we get a chunk of it, we're moved to a different timeline. I mean, it's great for Tom because he knows how it's all going to work out in the end. But it makes it tough when you're reading the monthlies to kind of get invested in the story. So I don't know, I haven't gone back and reread. Maybe if I sit down and read issues 1 through 5 all together in one sitting, I imagine I'd get more out of it. So I don't know. It's one of those things, we've talked about it before, where a lot of times I think a lot of the Tom King stories would just be better suited to just put them out, in one chunk as a graphic novel. But the art by Clay Mann, Clay Mann is spectacular. For my money, is one of the top 3 artists working in comics today. Tnion Moray, one of the best color artists. So the art is spectacular. I love the mask, sort of the clownish mask that it's almost like a mime mask that the older Harley Quinn wears when she shows up. For fans of Mask of the Phantasm, her characterization has been very, very good. A lot of action. Dialogue is, typical Tom King dialogue. It's very smart. So yeah, again, it's my criticisms are the criticisms I've had throughout. And I can't wait to just have this whole series be done and sitting in front of me and being able to read it all in one sitting. And I have mentioned in the past, and I do sort of feel this as well in reading this issue, and I get it, Clay's not the fastest because his art is super detailed, but this whole story did lose some momentum because it did come out so long after Tom's Batman run has already ended. And what James Tynion is doing in Batman is so disconnected from this story that this does feel sort of anticlimactic in a way. It feels very disconnected, which I suppose is fine. It is a Black Label book, and it's not necessarily canon. But as DC's fond of saying, we kind of let our fans decide what's kind of like Killing Joke, which became canon just because everybody loved it so much. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm at with this. Like technically, it's well paced. The dialogue is good, scripted well. The art's spectacular. But yeah, it's just that story structure. I don't know if it's best served in this format. So what are your thoughts, Rocky?
This is beautiful art, and it's really it's so great and sexy to see a new Harley Quinn. To see Clay Mann's version of an older Harley Quinn. An older Harley Quinn is still sexy as hell, drawn by Claire. I mean, who's going to object? I mean, I'm going to buy this issue just to see Clay Mann draw Catwoman, and even an older Selina Kyle. 2 old women, Selina Kyle and Harley Quinn, fighting, and it still looks sexy as hell. Go figure. And that's really what this entire issue is. It's a glorified fight scene, beautifully rendered between Selina Kyle and an older Selina Kyle and Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn's upset because it's well established in the narrative that Selina, ultimately Catwoman, kills the Joker. At least Catwoman appeared to kill the Joker early on. In fact, that was at the end of issue 1, I believe, or issue 1 or 2 or something. In any event, and so now the big mystery is, why did Selina kill the Joker? And it has something to do with the Phantasm, and the Phantasm is still alive and wants revenge. And in this issue, the Phantasm even takes revenge on one of Joker's old minions, and and again, you're right when you talk about the 3 timelines. We've talked before. You and I have been very generous with Tom King. I think we've acknowledged that his Rorschach's gotten better. It's actually gotten, I think, I've really enjoyed it anyway. I think he's doing a good job with Rorschach, that his pacing and his story is actually coming together, which surprises me. And his Strange Adventures, his latest one, I think that story is actually coming together near the end too. I'm enjoying it. I like the mystery and the intrigue there. He's actually nailing the landing, which frankly I never would have thought Tom King would be able to do, given given how I felt about his Batman run. But I said before too, is Batman Catwoman here. This is a little bit more convoluted. I totally agree. I think that when we read it, like you said, if we read this from beginning to end, maybe over the full 12 issues that we'll get, maybe it's going to read a lot better. But right now, this 3 timelines, it's just not working. It's still it's convoluted, and I get a very strong sense that it's so unnecessary. I don't need the 3 timelines here. I don't need to have this. There's no reason. It's almost like I get a very strong sense, and I hope I'm wrong, that there's not much story to tell. So the one way that he'll drag out the story is, well, why don't I just create 3 timelines? And I'm not even sure what the purpose of having their daughter, the Huntress, or the new future Batwoman. What's the point of even having the daughter there? And the daughter confronts her mom. Tell me about the Joker last issue. And I'm not really sure what the purpose is here. I'm not sure if there's going to be any payoff. I'm not sure what the big deal is. I mean, if Catwoman killed the Joker, the question I ask myself is, who cares? Like, I'm really serious when I say that. I don't think that's a big deal. Is it really that much of a stretch that Selina would kill the Joker? Years after Bruce Wayne dies, after Batman Annual 2, where Bruce Wayne dies of Alzheimer's, Selina then kills the Joker, finally kills the Joker. That's not really big news to me. Now, if there's a story there, tell me that story. But it feels like he's taking forever to tell me that story. And so far, it doesn't really seem to be all that interesting, other than just showing the Phantasm seemingly coming back to life and, confronting Selina. And there's melodrama here, but no story, if that makes any sense. It's all flash and no substance at this point for me. But if there's a payoff, maybe I can go back and reread some of the previous issues and be rewarded, like in Strange Adventures. I felt that I could do that. I was rewarded with the latest issue of Strange Adventures. I could go back and reread some of those scenes and maybe get a better appreciation for them. But in any event, the jury is still out on this one, and that's me being as generous as I possibly can be.
Yeah, well, again, I'll point to the fact that we get so little, I guess I should say, of each particular timeline. I mean, we're not even halfway through this series yet. This is only issue 5 of 12. And if you think about it, like I said, if he were doing it, one issue was one timeline, so it would take 3 issues to get it. If you put each timeline in its own issue, we're only 1 issue through each timeline. 1.5, I guess, issues through each timeline.
Yeah,
so,
point.
Yeah, I mean, if we think of this as, okay, this is really, if it's 12 issues and there's 3 timelines, each timeline's going to get 4 issues worth of story. Could you say, if you were reading a 4-issue mini and you were only an issue and a half through it, you couldn't really, I feel like most of the time, you're not really going to be able to say, hey, I really like this miniseries. I think it was great. If you're only an issue, you got to at least finish 2 issues, maybe even start, a third before you really have an idea, because that's when you're starting to approach the climax. Because I agree with you at this point, Rocky, it's like, I don't know what the point of the story is yet, because I agree with you. So Selina Kyle killed the Joker. So what? She probably wanted to kill him for years, but knew that Bruce would disapprove. So waited until he passed on and then went and did what she'd wanted to do for years. Right.
Yeah.
Big deal. He deserved it long, long ago. So yeah. Why is the Mask of the Phantasm show up? Why? I love that Tom King made the Mask of the Phantasm a woman, or was she a woman in the cartoon? I honestly don't remember. It's been too long. So
yeah.
But anyway, yeah. Again, it's just, God, we're gonna have to wait until we're like, I feel at least 8 issues into this thing before we really can say, okay, I see what's going on here. So, and maybe King's doing that on purpose. Maybe it's a way for him to keep people guessing. I don't know. So yeah, come for the Clayman art, and maybe it'll work out in the end. I would, unless you're a Tom King fan or a Clayman fan, this is not a series that I would recommend somebody jump on. Like, if you didn't like Tom King's Batman run, you shouldn't be.
Well, hey, if you're into elders and seniors beating the hell out of each other, you got an old woman, Selina Kyle and Harley, to observe in issue 5 here. Check it out.
Yeah, like pick it up in trade. I'm sure a lot of people are trade waiting on this one. I wouldn't
Yeah.
be surprised to see this do gangbusters in trade.
Uh,
All right. Well, up next is Swamp Thing #4. This is also written by Ram V, and I didn't even mention, we talked about his Catwoman work and his Many Deaths of Layla Starr, obviously Justice League Dark. I totally spaced on the fact he's writing Swamp Thing right now. Mike Perkins handles the art. Mike Spicer does colors. Adita Bidikar on letters. Next issue, I think I mentioned this, or I think I mentioned it last time. Maybe not, but we definitely mentioned it when I had John McCrae on the show not too long ago, that he's going to be the fill-in artist on issue 5. So look forward to seeing John McCrae's take. He's never drawn an issue of Swamp Thing. He's just drawn him in a little tiny panel, and he gets to draw John Constantine. He's going to be in the next issue, so I'm really looking forward to that. And because of that, even though I said I was out, I went ahead and read this, although in the interest of full disclosure, I did read it relatively quickly. I didn't spend a lot of time ruminating on it. Because despite my praise of Ram V, this doesn't feel like anything that's hugely original, but it is well written. It is well paced. I do like the introduction of the idea that Levi Kamel's brother could be responsible maybe for Levi becoming Swamp Thing. So we learned in this issue that his brother bears some sort of grudge because he missed out on something. Or I don't know. It's not clear. Probably if I went back and read the first 3, there'd be more clues there.
yeah.
But he's caused a blight in the Green, and so it seems like the Green has maybe reached out to Levi and given him the power of Swamp Thing because he might be best suited to battle his brother or to stop his
Yeah.
brother. The art is great. The colors, especially Mike Spicer's colors, are the perfect complement to Mike Perkins' very detailed art. So yeah, it's a very technically well done book. It's very Swamp Thing. It feels like it belongs in that world. But doesn't feel wholly original, and maybe it shouldn't because it is very much Swamp Thing. And that's kind of all I have to say about it. I've said before, I'm not a giant Swamp Thing fan, so yeah, I don't know that I would have. I mean, it's hard for me. I get the preview copy. It's hard for me to go, oh, well, it's sitting there. I should read it. They took the time to send it to me. I should take the time to review it. So it's hard for me not to read something. But I didn't plan on reading it, but I went ahead and checked it out. And I thought it was nice enough. I mean, if you're a Swamp Thing fan, if you're a huge Ram V fan, you got to be digging this. And I know that you've been really enjoying the series so far, Rocky. So what did you think of this one?
I really liked it. One of the things that you and I joked about, I think when we reviewed the first issue of Swamp Thing, is that we joked about how we want the DC universe to have more hope, and we felt that the first issue, I think it was maybe the second issue, that it felt more hopeful. There was some sense of hope because it ended with the bonsai tree, coming at the end, and it ended on a hopeful note. And the hope that we're looking for in the DC universe, it would actually end on with a great deal of a feeling of hope in the story. And it's interesting. There's a hope theme in this issue as well that writer Ram V sort of builds upon. There is a contagion that's infecting the Green, and one of the last words that Levi's father said to him, that he heard his father say when his father was dying on his deathbed, that's revealed in this issue. His father said, "What have you done, Jacob?" And Jacob is Levi's brother, and so Jacob, very likely, as you indicated, very likely probably did something that released the contagion that is infecting the Green. And it's interesting that how Ram V he's been criticized in a way. Sometimes writer Ram V has been criticized, and I don't necessarily agree with the criticism that he can be a little wordy sometimes, that he gives a lot of exposition. I actually like Ram V's exposition. I think he uses it well, and most of the time it serves his narratives well. He uses that, and every word that Ram V puts in his stories, I find generally benefits the story. And one of the things that he makes clear here is that he actually explains, because I'm not a long-time Swamp Thing reader. I don't pretend to be an expert on Swamp Thing, but I get it. I have an understanding of what the Green is. And he explains that the Green is information. And the Green is also the memory. It's nature, but it's also the memory of everything. And what the contagion is doing is that it's infecting the memory. And what the contagion is doing is making the Green only remember the malevolency of humanity, only remembering the bad of humanity. So it's infecting the memories of the Green, and the Green is fighting back by creating hope. And that's why it reached out to Levi. So Levi really is a sense, he's the embodiment of the hope of the green, to help them remember who they really are, to save the green. And the idea, again, and they mentioned that same thing, and that was in the first issue, about bad ideas being overcome. The better idea will win. And so we got this idea between the hope and the contagion. And so there's thematic links between all these issues here, and it works really well. His friend Jennifer Reese at the beginning ends up meeting with Jason Woodrow, and ultimately Swamp Thing ends up talking to Alec Holland, or at least the memory of Alec Holland. And it works very well. They wake up in Prescott Labs once Levi sort of rescues Jennifer, and they leave Prescott Labs. But Prescott Labs is soon infiltrated by this character called Mr. Pilgrim, who apparently knows a lot about something called the Holland phenomena, which I'm assuming is related to Alec Holland. And he ends up contacting your favorite character, Amanda Waller. As soon as I saw that at the end, I thought, boy, Chase is going to be happy.
Actually, you know what? When that happened, as soon as he picked up the phone and started calling, I knew exactly who he was on the phone with. Like, I don't know how I knew, but I just, well, no, it's because he said Belle Rev. So I'm
right.
like, as soon as he said that, and then I scrolled, to the next page, and I see her, and my immediate reaction was, Jesus fucking Christ. Are you kidding me? Like, I get it. There's a suicide movie coming, everybody. How about DC continue to beat us over the head with it? But enough with the damn Suicide Squad crossover. And it's not even Suicide Squad. Like, it's just enough with Amanda Waller already. So, I mean, Jesus. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and it's funny because DC just released their August solicitations, and it is riddled. Every single DC title has a Suicide Squad variant cover. Every single one. We are going to be bombarded with suicide variant covers, and I don't think it's a coincidence. I think this was, all of these storylines involving in some way, shape, or form Belle Reeve, the Suicide Squad. I'm fairly certain it's intentional. However, I do want to give a compliment here, is that you and I, Jace, along with a few others who actually read most all of the DC titles, the one thing I'll give DC credit for here is that we can see the threads. There is connective tissue between Teen Titans, Teen Titans Academy, Swamp Thing, Superman. I mean, those threads are there. Those little tiny threads, the Justice League, all those, they're there. Those Easter eggs are there. They might be tenuous and less obvious in some issues, but it's there. And, that's what as a longtime reader, I like getting those little rewards. That when I can see the connections there. So even though I might laugh, oh, he hits Amanda Waller again, I do like the fact that I do like that. It does kind of put a little smirk on my face because it does. It's building the continuity of the DC universe, and I don't know. Do you find that, or do you find it more annoying than tolerable?
No, I mean, I agree with you. These crossovers make sense. And to be clear, it's not that I dislike the Suicide Squad. It's that I dislike Amanda Waller. So it's not, it's not that and I should say, I guess in a way she sort of has that same problem that Batman has had over the years, right? It's that power creep, where Batman has become more and more powerful because each subsequent writer has to kind of top what's come before. It's kind of the same way with Amanda Waller. Like, there's a line that she wouldn't have crossed based on her own morality, and that line has become more and more blurry or been pushed out further and further to the point where I just feel like she's an out and out villain these days. The things she does, she was always the epitome of the ends justifies the means, right? That's no longer the case. Like, I don't think anybody can objectively look at her and say the ends justify the means. She's sadistic. She tortures people. She has people killed, and it's all for the greater good. No, she has become a villain, and she's become so two-dimensional and just, I think, not a good representative character. She already was sort of tropey in her origins, right? Big angry, black woman who grew up on the wrong side of the tracks, blah blah blah. And I just feel like, as a character that's a person of color, we need to move beyond that. And she has evolved, but I think she's evolved into something that's even worse than a stereotype now. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I'm excited for the Suicide Squad movie. I understand DC is going to try to do this and get people to pick up the books, and you got to do what you got to do to try to bring in comic readers, and these books are worth reading. It's not that I want less Suicide Squad. I just want less Amanda Waller. Every time she shows up in one of these books, I'm just like, well, here's another chance for Amanda Waller to do something despicable, So, yeah, not a big surprise. But anyway, let's move on to Crush and Lobo. And I think, I don't know if we mentioned it on the show or if it was just you and I talking. And you had mentioned that you're really excited for the series. I thought it was a one shot. But no, it does. It turns out this is a limited series. It says right on the cover, 1 of 8. And so it's written by Mariko Tamaki. The art is by Ammon K. Nahalpin. Color by Tamara Bonvillain. Letters by Ariana Mayer. And I'm curious, Rocky. I'm not even sure. Are you a Lobo fan? Because I know you're a fan of Crush. So
yeah. No, I'm a huge Lobo fan. I'm a huge Lobo fan. I love Lobo, and I'm a Crush fan as well out of Teen Titans. And I just want to say something too that's worth mentioning that I can't believe more people aren't mentioning, and I wish people would make it more. I wish this was more on the spec, but there was a rumor based on Harley Quinn's Black Book issue 5 that Crush is the offspring of Lobo and Harley Quinn. That Harley Quinn is Crush's mother. Like that was. I mean, there was a very adult issue it was Harley Quinn Black Book issue 5. It was definitely not for kids. There was sex clearly happened between Lobo and Harley. And okay, and then there was talk. Well, then all of a sudden, if I told you that Crush was the offspring of Harley Quinn and Lobo, you'd believe it. I'd believe it. To me, it's obvious. And even if it's not obvious, DC should be creating that misdirection, even if it isn't. And anyways, I have that in the background, that in my mind. And where am I going with this? Where I'm going with this is that I was really disappointed with this issue. I think Mariko Tamaki, who's doing a fantastic job on Detective, and Mariko Tamaki she's impressed me on Detective Comics, and I think I know she's capable of writing a good story. I have not enjoyed any of her. I read her Harley Quinn Breaking Glass, her young adult, and I thought it was unreadable. I thought it was terrible. And unfortunately, she's taken that approach here. I think I'm going to be very diplomatic. I'm not. It's a good thing I'm not drinking, because I would be far less diplomatic. But I was just extremely disappointed with Crush's characterization here. She's the daughter of Lobo. For God's sakes. She's got to be bored. She should be portrayed as crazy, nuts, more than just angry, but zany. She should not be written seriously, and she absolutely should not have a common, perfect girlfriend here on Earth. Or it's just nuts. Like everything about this was wrong. In my view. To be fair, it is obvious to me that Crush is no longer a character that I think is going to be, frankly, worth reading if this is how she's going to be written. If they keep her away from Earth and away from any attempt to make her, exploring her, whatever, her relationship, that's so boring. That was the most boring scenes in this narrative, where she's talking with her perfect girlfriend. How did she acquire a girlfriend? There's nothing about Crush that cries out normal. She's Lobo's daughter. Whose idea was this to make her normalize her? That she's going to go out randomly and just, again, this has got it. She's Crush. She's Lobo's daughter. She should be an absolute insane party crasher, screwed up. She shouldn't be somebody who's angsting and trying to find her path and her way and doesn't want to be happy even though she's got a perfect girlfriend, and she's gonna miss her girlfriend's birthday party. She's gonna be late. This was ridiculous. I'm sorry, but this is not the Crush that I'm interested in reading about at all. I'm glad at the end she's gonna go out and try to find her dad and Lobo, and that'll be keep her away from Earth, leave her in space. I don't know, man. Maybe I'm kind of being a little bit of a, like I said, I could say more, but let's just say that this is not my cup of tea. Look, artistically, this is great, but I don't know. I personally, like, even this cover, the Pride cover here, is this the focus? Is the point of Lobo's daughter, so let's exemplify the fact that she's a lesbian and let's focus a story on the fact that she's a lesbian. This is Lobo's daughter. If you want to tell stories about young adults finding their sexuality, this is not the character to do it with. I'm sorry. This is ridiculous. I mean, can you? Sure. But this is Crush. Opening page, sure, this is Crush. But I don't know. This whole thing was just wrong-headed to me. This had Mariko Tamaki tried to do a balancing act between, having her have a perfect girlfriend that, of course, she screws up that relationship and then she goes looking for her father. It's all fine. And it just didn't work for me. It took me right out of the story. It just didn't work for me. I don't know, Jace. I mean,
I know nothing about Crush.
Okay.
This is the first book that I've read with her in it, so I can't say whether or not this characterization is because she. So, am I right in saying that she's an Adam Glass creation?
Yeah. I don't know if Adam Glass created her, but he was writing Teen Titans when she premiered, so I think that's probably accurate. It's probably accurate. Yeah. And to be honest, I want to be clear. In fairness, there's ample room to disagree with me on this, because I just figure that if ever there's a psychotic character that you should be building up her psychosis and having fun with her, it's Crush. I mean, she's a teenager, and she's likely Tamaki, if she was paying attention, right away, she shouldn't just be who's her mother. She should be finding out. She should be curious as to who her mother is, and then going looking for her dad. There should be hints that it's Harley Quinn. They're approaching everything they're doing with Crush is wrong. Everything. I mean, you can leave her sexuality. I don't care about that. But focusing on her teenage sex life. Good God. Talk about I just think they're missing the point on this. But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. This is not, obviously this isn't a book for me. And what I have a really hard time. I don't know. I would prefer, I don't even want, if this is going to be Crush, I would rather just have a Lobo story, to be very honest. And maybe this is just, I don't know. I'm going to stop talking now. What did you think when you read it? What did you think? Like,
I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah? Okay.
I didn't expect to like it. But I quite enjoyed it. I'm not a fan of Lobo and his crazy macho psychotic behavior. I think it's tropey and frankly uninteresting. Okay, he's the last member of his alien species. Oh, that's original. Oh, he takes no prisoners and cusses and smokes cigars and gets drunk. Well, that's original. No, there's nothing about it, Lobo, to me that's original. I don't find it humorous or enjoyable. I mean, I can take Lobo in very small doses, especially if it's written by Frank Thierry. I think Frank does bring a sense of, like a farcical sense, a self-awareness to Lobo, that he knows how ridiculous and over the top and kind of just nonsensical that he is. And so I sort of feel like, well, and again, I have read nothing of Crush, so I don't know if the characterization of her here accurately reflects what's come before when he's been a member of Teen Titans or not. I have no idea because I have read none of that stuff. Um, but to me, it would make sense that she hasn't spent any time with her father. She doesn't know who her mother is. She's was raised in foster care and then became a Teen Titan, and she's facing supervillains and world-ending threats. It makes perfect sense to me that she wouldn't have an identity or really know who she is. So while I can see your point of if she's Lobo's daughter, she should act crazy like Lobo, I can also see the argument, well, she hasn't been around her dad in order for her dad to influence her that way. She does definitely seem to have some anger issues. And so, yeah, I can see her, just in terms of, let's forget the fact that she's half alien, half human, maybe depending on who her mother is, and just focus on, what she's been exposed to as she's growing up. I could totally see her trying to have in your words, a very normal girlfriend. And I think Crush even says that here because I think she is trying to be normal. She is trying to fit in. And that seems like a very realistic thing for a teenage girl to do for me. So I don't know. Like I said, I enjoyed it. Enough to where I'm interested in where it's going. Obviously, Lobo does show up here, and you didn't mention that. Lobo's trying to better himself. He's in prison. He's going to therapy, which seems like sort of the last thing you'd ever expect Lobo to do. So, how's that going to work? And you just sort of feel like Lobo's just biding his time and using it as an excuse to reach out to Crush to have her come and break him out of prison.
Exactly.
Is sort of how I read that, telling the psychologist, the robotic therapist what they want to hear so he can, break out, and whether or not Lobo and his daughter will come to an understanding or if his psychosis will rub off onto her and she'll be more kick butt crazy like you're hoping, Rocky, or will he finally step up and be a father? Like, I don't know. There's interesting things here. Crush has never been a character that I cared about before, but I thought Mariko Tamaki did a great job for readers like me who have no previous history with Crush to give us something interesting, to give us, a little. Now, whether or not it matches up with what's come before, as I said, I have absolutely no idea.
Oh, it doesn't. It doesn't not match up, Jace. It does match up fine, like because they've never really dealt much with Crush. I mean, Crush Crush herself had some feelings for another Teen Titans character, the genie. Forget her name. She was a genie character. So her sexuality has been established, and she's done it. I don't know. I think. I guess I have a tendency, and I guess this is on me. I'm just playing script doctor. I really think I could have scripted a better story, a far more interesting take on Crush. I really do. Yeah. I think they're missing the boat entirely on Crush, and I think that creating a mystery around both her dad and her mother, I think they're missing a huge opportunity.
I mean, I will say the story, it was a little tropey, with the birthday party and, her girlfriend's friends and their perfect parents and all that. So I get that, very much, 80s John Hughes movie. So I could see that, but it's the first issue. So I don't know. I'll wait. The jury's still out. I think the art's beautiful. The colors, especially, I thought were done very, very well. And yeah, like I said, I was like, really, Crush and Lobo? That's the last thing I want to read about. Here's a character I know zero about and a character that I really don't care to read about. But it pulled me in. It had me interested enough in Crush as a character that I went looking for a first appearance to see if I had it. And I guess is there some disagreement on what her first appearance is, whether it's Teen Titans number 20 or if it's special number 1?
If you're asking if there's a controversy between like a cameo versus first full appearance, I don't think there is. I think it is actually Teen Titans 20 or 21. I think it's one of those. Yeah. I actually have them right. Yeah. Just out of reach here. But
I found 20 and that said it was a first appearance, but then I also saw Teen Titans Special number 1, and somebody was saying that there were several issues of that on eBay as well that said first appearance. So yeah, you're probably right. One's probably a cameo. I will say the Teen Titans 20 was much more expensive, so That's probably the one that people are considering the first appearance. So,
Well, I think I've got
anyway,
doubles of the one. I'll just send it to you. How's that if I found the double? Because I'm pretty sure I got doubles of it when it came
yeah,
out.
I would not say no to that. But anyway, I mean, this is a perfect example. Let us know. Like Rocky and I completely disagree on this one. Let us know what you guys think in the comment section below, or reach out to us on social media. Very very curious what people think of this. And again, I mean, I'm coming at it from the no Lobo fan section, and Rocky's coming at it from the Lobo fan section.
Yeah.
But I guess we'll see.
Well,
So let me
Lobo
ask
is
you.
in character here. Lobo is totally in character.
Oh yeah,
She nailed it. I
oh
mean,
yeah.
Lobo could. I personally think Lobo could give a rat's ass. He's got a daughter, as if he doesn't have daughters scattered throughout the galaxy. I mean, come on, he's Lobo.
Yeah, right.
I mean, this guy has screwed every life form in the Milky Way. I mean, come on. I mean, as if he's going to care. Of course, this is not the first offspring he's manipulated, but I'm sure they're going to change Lobo maybe a little bit just to. Anyways, I'll stop talking about it.
Are you going to read this? Are you going to read the second issue?
Oh yeah, I am. And by the way, I think this could be very entertaining because there was some humor in here, and but it all centered around Lobo. I mean, as if anybody would tell Crush to go have a heart-to-heart with Lobo. Your father's Lobo. You're gonna have a heart-to-heart with Lobo? Come on. I mean, that's not gonna happen. I mean, if it's gonna happen, I want to see Mariko Tamaki pull it off so it doesn't feel forced. I think that's going to be hard to pull off, but we'll see. I mean, we'll see. Yeah,
I agree with you. I don't think it's going to happen. She's going to show up there, and he's going to be like, "All right, get me out of here. Let's break out."
Exactly.
So, yeah. All right. Well, on to Suicide Squad number 4. Robbi Thompson handles the script. We have pencils from Edwardo Pansica on some of the pages and breakdowns on other of the pages. Inks and finishes for Joe Prado on some of the pages. Julio Ferreira on inks for the other pages. So definitely a collaboration between the three of them, Pansica, Prado, and Ferreira. Marcelo Maiello handles the color. Wes Abbott on letters. And, this is continuing the Red X storyline. I guess we'd call it the conclusion of the Teen Titans Suicide Squad crossover. And I quite enjoyed it, despite the fact that Amanda Waller here is at her Amanda Wallerist, when she's shocking Peacemaker when he disagrees. She's like, you're in charge out in the field, back here, when we're within the walls of Bel Rev, this is my world. So I think the word she uses, you're in charge on a mission, and when you're back here, you're just another inmate. And Peacemaker's whole thing is you shouldn't have brought Red X back here. He's a loose cannon. He's more powerful and more capable than you realize. And we do see him chained up with about 1,000 different chains. And he's, like I mentioned earlier, Amanda Waller's sadistic side. He's basically being tortured by electric shock, but he manages to break out. He's exactly where he wants to be. He's very Batman-esque in this issue, right? Like, if Batman gets captured 9 times out of 10, it's because he wanted to get captured, because that was the best way to infiltrate wherever. And that's sort of the same thing here. And we don't even know what Red X's powers are, other than he appears to be a very capable fighter and seems to have some superhuman, strength and reflexes. He certainly breaks out of these chains here, but then he's also able to infiltrate the computers and, allows a bunch of inmates, releases them, and it's a whole wing of the prison where they're rioting. And so, pretty interesting. And it's sort of limit, like, I've heard people say, well, yeah, Red X could be Roy Harper, Arsenal. This guy seems way above that level to me.
He does.
Roy Harper doesn't have, superhuman abilities or whatever. We do get a really cool Peacemaker and Red X fight. And maybe the reason I enjoyed this issue is because Red X does get one over on Amanda Waller. Basically, flips her the bird and says, "You can't hold me." It's clear that he allowed himself to get captured, and so he escapes. And we also find out that somebody else escaped at the end, Rick Flag, and it's great with Red X kind of mocking Amanda Waller at the end. For the record, I didn't have anything to do with your other toy getting away. But don't worry, I'm sure he won't cause you any problems, and leaves laughing. So, it's a big F you to Amanda Waller. So, I love it. I love Robbi Thompson that he does that for me, because he did it for me personally. He knows my dislike of Amanda Waller. That's how it felt anyway. But this is one action-packed book, and the art is incredible, despite the fact that Ferreira inks over the pages that Edward Pansica, did in more detail, as opposed to the layout pages that Joe Prado kind of finishes and inks. The art's very consistent throughout. I can't really. I mean, I'm sure if I went page by page, because the page numbers are listed, I could find some differences. But in reading it, it didn't pull me out of the story at any point. I felt the art was very consistent. I love the colors. This is, oftentimes I'll talk about wanting traditional superhero books to have really bright colors, because it sort of immerses you in that world of the fantastic. Suicide Squad, in my mind, isn't a typical superhero book. It's not Superman. It's not Justice League. It should be a little darker. This is a darker world, and Amanda Waller certainly makes it that way. So Marcelo Maiello, who I've given colorist of the year before as my personal choice, does a great job with the colors, and there's no surprise. One thing I do notice is Marcelo Maiello, one of his trademarks that he'll do is he'll go to emphasize a particular panel. He'll go monochromatic or dichromatic, where he's only using one or two colors in a panel to really make it pop. He didn't do that anywhere in any of these pages, which is fine. Just because he's done it in the past doesn't mean he needs to do it here. And I thought the colors were spectacular. So yeah, I really enjoyed this issue. I thought it was great. I have a hard time finding anything negative to say about it. Not that I need to, but the only thing that kind of struck me, and it didn't strike me until after I finished reading it, I think there were some scenes between Talon and Culebro that were supposed to be comic relief, and they were okay, but they weren't kind of the laugh out loud comedy moments that we've had from Culebra in the past. But that's a small little nitpick. It didn't feel like there was any place in the story to really give her some great lines like she's had in the past from Robbie Thompson. And I'm sure that he put that interaction between Talon and Culebra in here for comic relief. And it was entertaining, it was amusing, but it wasn't, I mean, she's had some real zingers before, and I always look forward to those. So, I can't say that I wouldn't have enjoyed having a zinger or two here, but, it doesn't need to be every issue. And writing comedy is extremely hard. I've had a lot of writers tell me that in comics, superhero comics especially. So, again, minor nitpick. This was great. Probably one of my favorite reads of the week. And honestly, this is probably the first issue that made me really start feeling invested in who Red X might be. Because before I've just been like, I've never seen the Teen Titans cartoon. I'm not invested in who, in Red X as a character, because I don't know who he is, and I have no attachment to him. And it's just been kind of, honestly, I feel like in the pages of Teen Titans, it's been a distraction. Like in Teen Titans Academy, I want to get to the part of the story where we're learning about the relationships between the students at the academy, because when you talk about a book that's an academy like Morning Glories or Deadly Class or, Umbrella Academy, that's to me what the interesting part of the story is. These young characters discovering who they are and building relationships and whatnot, as opposed to this distraction of the Red X character. But this one pulled me in. Robbie Thompson did a great job. Like, okay, now I'm starting to want to know who he is, what his game plan is. So if that's what Robbie Thompson was going for, he nailed it. So yeah, I thought this was a spectacular issue.
Yeah, the Red X mystery is something that I'm not a big fan of it in the pages of Teen Titans Academy. But it is probably, I think it's more appropriate for the Suicide Squad, to be honest. Red X feels like he's a better fit intermingling and commiserating with the Suicide Squad than in Teen Titans Academy. It just doesn't seem like a good fit over there. And it seems like an odd crossover between Suicide Squad and Teen Titans Academy. This one obviously carries over from Teen Titans Academy. They were unsuccessful in kidnapping Bolt. And as a punishment, Red X, of course, he's Waller's chaining him up in this issue, as you talked about. What's fascinating about Red X
one second, right? I just kind of to add to that, you wonder if, I mean, obviously, if you're going to bring Red X in, you've got to into the DC Universe comic sphere. You've got to pull him into Teen Titans because that's, he debuted on the Teen Titans cartoon. Maybe this whole crossover was because DC realized he's not a fit for Titans Academy. Let's cross it over with Suicide Squad. Maybe this is where his story will play out.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's interesting. Although, like you said, the whole thing is a little bit off because Teen Titans, you would think that it would be in a different title other than Teen Titans than an actual academy that deals with kids and everything else. It just seems like an odd fit. But no, you're right. Fair enough. In any event, the mystery of Red X continues because Red X seems to know a little bit about everybody. I mean, just to give Red X tells Talon that he is a friend. So he's a friend of the Talon. He tells Connor that I want all of you to be free, especially you. He says that to Connor. So what does Red X have why would he say that to Connor, especially you? So so obviously Connor must know Red X, or is there like a special relationship between whoever Red X is and Connor? He tells Calibra that Waller is lying about keeping your mother safe. So he knows something about Calibra. I think he did intentionally break out Rick Flag. I think he's lying when he said he didn't intentionally do it. I think he did that on purpose. And he obviously let himself be captured by Waller. So he's extremely confident. Waller even admitted to the rest of the Suicide Squad that he's got Batman level intellect, is what she said. So that would imply, does that mean he's a member of the Bat family or a former member of the Bat family? If Tim Drake hadn't shown up in the pages of Nightwing, I would be inclined to think maybe this is Tim Drake coming out of the woodwork, although that doesn't really fit in with what we know with him with Future State. I think while I originally thought he was Roy Harper, I like that theory. It's beginning to seem less and less likely, unless they're going to. Like you sort of alluded to, I've never saw Roy Harper as being particularly intelligent. I mean, with all due respect to Roy Harper, yeah, I would never describe him as Batman level intellect. But so yeah, the mystery continues here, and and like I said, this continues to be entertaining as hell. Probably one of the nicest surprises coming out. I got to tell you, coming out of Tom Taylor's fantastic 9-issue or 10-issue Suicide Squad run himself, to come off the hills, come off the tail end of Tom Taylor's successful Suicide Squad run, and to be this entertaining, Robbie Thompson's done a pretty good job here. And you said Edwardo Pansica as the artist, he's done a fantastic job as well.
All right, give me your top 3 picks of who you think Red X could be.
Oh man, well, I still gotta go. I still gotta guess that one of them is probably. I would have to say Roy Harper. I would still say, even though it's looking less and less likely. The other Red. Good Lord. I honestly, I'm racking my brain. I'm trying to. I don't know, because I mean I would be inclined to say Tim Drake, except he showed up in Nightwing. I suppose it still could be Tim Drake, but why would he become Red X of all people? He's got a strange connection to the Titans, or a past connection to the Titans. Would it be maybe Deathstroke's son? Maybe what's his name? Jericho.
Jericho. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm thinking outside the box here. I mean, like somebody
isn't Jericho mute though?
Sure. I guess he was, but mind you, in the pages of Deathstroke, I think he did overcome some of that in the pages of Deathstroke, and you never know. I just don't know in this new Omniverse. I mean, it could be anybody. I don't know. Do you, who's your candidate?
Actually, I have 4 in order of most outrageous, most unlikely, an alternate reality or an alternate universe Bruce Wayne. Like, you want to talk about Batman level intellect, maybe it is very sure. Batman thing to do. And mine are all sort of Bat family, every one of them. Sort of tied for second and third. I wouldn't put one over the other. Well, I guess I would put one. I would put one over the other. Hush would be number 3. Thomas Elliott.
Okay.
Although I don't know, Red X seems maybe a little too young. Third, kind of in that same vein, would be Lincoln March. That would definitely fit in with the whole calling Talon a friend.
Right.
And then my number one, kind of similar to my number four, would be more than anybody. It seems like Dick Grayson, but Dick Grayson with a much harder edge. So it wouldn't be obviously our Dick Grayson. It would be Dick Grayson from an alternate universe. And I was trying to remember
From Earth
we
3.
talked about yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. We were talking about Forever Evil earlier when we talked about Crime Syndicate, and yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, well, maybe this is the Dick Grayson. Although in Forever Evil, he was the one that got his head cut off, right? If I remember right, that was the whole thing about why the Grayson Agent of Spiral thing came out, because Grayson was supposedly dead, and then they were going to do. In fact, James Tynion was just talking about it on social media the other day about the other alternate Nightwing story that they maybe were going to do, alternate Nightwing series, and then eventually they went with Tom King and Tim Seeley's Dick Grayson or Grayson Agent of Spiral. So yeah, maybe this is Earth 3 Dick Grayson. I mean, that's who he seems like to me more than anybody. He's very Dick Grayson, other than the fact that he does seem to have superhuman abilities. So I don't know. I am intrigued. So kudos to Robbi Thompson for sucking me into what I really didn't care, the mystery that I hadn't cared about up till this point. So I guess we'll see. And I fully expect, in the interest of full disclosure, I fully expect DC to drag this out so long that I will stop caring and be like, oh my God, would you just freaking get it over with already?
Yeah.
2 years probably. It's going to take him 2 years to tell us, most likely. All right. Well, on to Batman 109, The Cowardly Lot Part 4. James Tynion the fourth is the writer. Jorge Jimenez on art. Tomeo Morey on colors and Clayton Cowell on letters. And then we have the backup Ghost Story, which is also written by Tynion with Ricardo Lopez Ortiz on art, Tomeo Morey on colors, and Clayton Cowell on letters. What'd you think of this one, Rock?
Just get my notes here. Oh man, this was I continue to be impressed. James Tynion, just I love the art, I love the writing. This here has there's a lot that happens in this issue. There's I think a great conversation between Harley Quinn and Ghostmaker. I think that there's a great conversation between Batman recalls a conversation he has with Miracle Molly, where she asks him last issue, how much stronger would you be if you could let go of your past? And could that Batman save Gotham? And Batman ultimately confronts Simon Saint in this issue because he, in his conversations with Oracle, he's slowly putting together the fact that this fear toxin, that the Scarecrow, without even having to use a fear toxin, the Scarecrow is utilizing just basically PR and is increasing the fear of people, and is utilizing the Insanity Collective, which we now know to be they're not really bad people. The Insanity Collective, at least under Miracle Molly, they generally got a good cause, and they're not really criminals. They're more like civilly disobedient, and they've got a good purpose in mind. But it becomes quite clear that Simon Saint is the one that's trying to stoke the fears of Gotham, and ultimately lay the blame at the feet of the Insanity Collective, and by doing so, increasing the fears, creating the idea of civil unrest in order to justify Mayor Nagano agreeing and authorizing the Peacekeeper program. And Peacekeeper 1 in this issue ultimately ends up attacking Batman when Batman confronts Simon Saint, demanding to know where the Scarecrow is. And Batman is ultimately temporarily incapacitated by Peacekeeper 1. And ultimately at the end there's a hint that there's a confrontation between Batman and Peacekeeper 1, which will continue on to the next issue. A lot, and I haven't even talked about, we were introduced last issue to Bella Gardner, who is Poison Ivy's college girlfriend or former lover of Poison Ivy. She's looking, she knows where Poison Ivy is. She confronts Harley Quinn and Ghostmaker and lets them know where Ivy is. And Ivy is apparently, of course, she's being, well, I guess she's got, we know that Ivy has a sort of a dual personality right now, and I don't know if it's a flaw from the heroes in Crisis, or she's got a dual personality, a split personality. She's got her poison side and she's got Ivy without the poison. And she's creating tree roots that are embedded all over Gotham, such that if they got to be careful. Apparently, Bella warns that if you rescue Ivy, she's basically her roots are tied into the cave systems under Gotham, that if those cave systems could collapse if you're not careful in how you rescue Ivy. And Bella gives Harley the heads up that when I give you the go ahead, I'll let you know where Harley is, or I'll let you know where Poison Ivy is, and then and then we'll go from there. So everything here is set up, but it's this is all building. I enjoy this narrative. All these little plot threads are coming together, and it's leading into what I know is going to be Future State. And I love that Tynion is not messing around. He's getting to the point. This plot line is moving. This isn't taking forever. I know some people, I know some other people who are reviewing this thinking this story is taking forever to tell. It's not taking forever to tell. It feels like it's moving to me. It feels like it's moving forward. We're getting new characters. We're getting good characterization. I'm enjoying this. And maybe I'm an outlier, but I think this is well worth the. It's well worth it. Like I said, and I love the art. The art's fantastic. Jace, I don't know, man. Are you still enjoying this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of in the same place that I've been for the past couple issues. I'm sounding like a broken record here. I feel like what we know of Future State has removed some of the momentum of the story. Simon Saint were a mystery. If we didn't know what the magistrate was, it would be more interesting to me. So as we continue heading toward that possible future, that's not something that I enjoyed. I'm frankly sick of the whole idea of fascist as a villain group. So magistrate is completely uninteresting to me. So knowing where the story is headed kind of removes some of the joy of reading it for me. That being said, it is well done. I mean, there's great character work here. What we learn of Bella Gardner is interesting. The scene between Ghostmaker and Harley Quinn in Ghostmaker's hideout, which he calls the Haunt, is inspired. It's absolutely spectacular.
Awesome.
The fact that he has a dinosaur that's bigger than a T-Rex because he's got a one-up Batman. The car that he has, that Harley just loves, his Ghost Racer. And he's like, oh, no, the Batmobile is better than the Ghost Racer, so I'm trashing this one. It's going to the industrial furnace. And you can tell Harley's thinking, well, you could just give it to me, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that scene was just a whole lot of fun. And you're right, the art by Jorge Jiminez does continue to be really inspired. Despite, what we talked about with the Suicide Squad and the connective tissue, this is one story where things aren't matching up 100%. Maybe Bella's not aware, because I'm just not sure where this fits in with what's been going on in the pages of Catwoman. We know Harley's already been rescued from the magistrate, so how that plays in with what information comes here from Bella Gardner, not exactly sure. Maybe it doesn't line up 100%. So I would say the most disappointing thing about the series recently in the last couple issues, since Tynion's been taking us down this path toward the magistrate, is I feel like we've gotten less Batman, or we get very little Batman in the last couple of issues. We're getting a lot of Harley and a lot of Ghostmaker, and not as much Batman, despite the fact that this is his book. So Yeah, I mean, I guess we did get quite a bit of him in his Matches Malone persona last issue when he was talking with the Unsane Society or what have you. So yeah, I mean it's okay. Again, the magistrate storyline, and I mean it's just so obvious. If Mayor Nakano's got a brain in his head, you can see it coming a mile away. The fact that he's agreed to this magistrate program, like I just feel like any sane person, anybody who could add 2 plus 2, would figure out that the Simon Saint guy is not on the up and up. You know, it's a little far fetched in my mind. Um, and the backup story, I don't really have a lot to say. Much like a lot of the backup stories that we've had, it's basically just the origin of Brainstorm. You know, so it's fine. Sort of like I feel like the best of this Ghostmaker backup were the early ones when it was focused on Ghostmaker. The last couple of iterations of the story have just been, okay, let's get the origin of this villain. Let's get the origin of this villain. Let's get the origin of this, which is, I guess, necessary. But I don't really care who Brainstorm is, to be honest with you. It's a Ghostmaker story. I want to read about Ghostmaker. But it's fine. I mean, it's Batman. It's still, Tynion. It's technically a good comic, in terms of pacing and art and scripting and transitions from panel to panel for the narrative or for the visual storytelling. I have no complaints about it technically. So it's just my personal taste. It's just okay because we are headed toward that magistrate story. Like honestly, I'll just be happy when we've put this whole future state era behind us to the point where we know we're not getting any of those futures that happen in future state, and we're no longer telling stories that hint toward that future. Just be completely done with it, and I'll be much happier. So, anything to add about the backup, Rocky?
No, I will say that, it's building up Ghostmaker's Rogues Gallery, and I think that Tinian is taking advantage of this opportunity to try to create a Batman with a slight, frankly, a good humored, a little bit more of almost like a sarcastic Batman, a little bit more of a cocky, sarcastic, slightly more little lighthearted and fun Batman, and that's Ghostmaker. And it is a little tropey, but frankly, I kind of think the DC universe benefits from it a little bit. I still think Ghostmaker's a good character. I think it's inevitable he's going to get his own comic one day, and I think that I think this is a good way to build up his own rogues gallery. And I still think that as crazy as his rogues gallery are, I think they're all kind of crazy characters in their own right. But I think that they're reasonably well developed, and I think, it's like Tinian said in one of his newsletters. He said, he's not overthinking. He's not reinventing the wheel. He's not overthinking things. He's keeping things simple. And it might seem simple on the surface, maybe a little bit oversimplified, and maybe a little over tropey with how he's treating Ghostmaker, but he's having fun with it, and I think it's working. And I think in the long run, Ghostmaker is a character that there's so much potential for Ghostmaker, so much potential, and I think he's such a great character. And yeah, if I think Batman is a comic book that should be on everybody's must buy list. I'm loving Batman under Tinian. I'm really enjoying what he's doing, what he's bringing to the table. I love the fact that see, some people complain that, well, what about the Joker and what about all the normal rogues gallery? Where are they? I don't care. He's creating his own characters. This Batman feels new and fresh, and some people are focused on, oh well, we've seen this magistrate thing before. We've seen Gotham in trouble before. Actually, no, we haven't seen it like this. We haven't seen. I'm talking about the characterization. Of course, we're always going to see Gotham in trouble. I mean, what do you expect? It's Batman. It's in Gotham. Yeah, but Gotham's always in trouble. What we don't see all the time is this type of characterization, this type of unique. He's bringing something, in my view, that's unique to the Batman mythos. This feels fun. This feels like it's going somewhere. It feels like he has a plan, And I don't know. In my view, that I think the pieces do fit. I do think, by the way, that I do think that before Harley rescues Poison Ivy, I think it'll be established that Selena beat her to it. So I think at the end, all these moving parts and all these titles, I do think that there's a narrative tissue there that connects it all. And I don't know. I'm enjoying the DC universe now than I have in a decade. Straight up.
Yeah,
Have
I
to go
mean,
back.
yeah,
Yeah, I have to go back to early Rebirth, to be quite honest. That since I've enjoyed all this many titles all at once, because usually I don't know. I'm not even drinking.
yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Tynion has gone on record as saying, because there is sort of this sentiment, and you'll hear some certain creators say it in social media. Don't create characters that you don't own. Because you're not going to reap any benefits. And Tynion has come on record as saying, no, I'm going to create new characters, a ton of new characters for Batman because it's exciting and it brings fans in. So it's worked out for him, right? It's led to more success and more visibility for some of his other titles. So it's worked really well. I do agree with you. Ghostmaker has a lot of potential. I think way more than Punchline, more than Clown Hunter. This Miracle Molly character that most recently debuted may in the long run be a more interesting and nuanced character, or has potential to be, than Ghostmaker. But I think Ghostmaker's appeal is much more broad. So I could see Ghostmaker, and I know this is a huge stretch to say at this point, but I could see Ghostmaker reaching like Deadpool level, eventually Deadpool level popularity, because he's got a lot of that fun, like you were talking about, that sort of fun, lightheartedness to him. So I guess we'll wait and see. I mean, to me, he's leaps and bounds better than Clown Hunter or Punchline. So very interesting. I mean, the one thing that I complained about when he first showed up was the fact that he's retconned in, and it's like, really? Would we really have had 40 years of Batman story or 40 years of history and he was that tied into Bruce's origin and we've never heard about him before? That makes no sense. Of course, we would have heard about him before, but you could say the same thing about the Court of Owls. How could they have operated in Gotham all this time and the world's greatest detective didn't find out? It's inherent when writers go back and insert things into a character's origin. It just doesn't make sense. You got to take it with a grain of salt. So anyway, on to Batman Fortnite 0 Point. We are on the 4th issue. So this is from a story by Donald Mustard. It's written by Christos Gage. Art is by Christian Doucet. Colors by John Kalish. Letters by Anworld Design. This is interesting. So Batman has found his way out of the world of Fortnite. He's on a different island now where he can actually talk. He meets up with a bunch of other characters who've managed to escape. Now they can all talk, but their memories haven't returned. Batman sort of shows his leadership skills here, despite the fact that nobody knows who anybody is. Everybody just senses that he's kind of the smartest guy in the room, right? And that he has these natural leadership capabilities. And before we know it, he's bossing everybody around. Very, very Batman-esque. And so I feel like more than any other issue we've gotten of this series up to this point, this one moves the narrative forward the most. They make some discoveries about people who may be moving in and out of this world, opening portals, sending them to that other world that we know is the Fortnite battleground. But what happens next? Who are these actual people? That is, remains to be seen. And at the end, it's revealed that one of the people on this island is obviously working for them, is a spy. So this continues to be a really interesting story. Just like I've said before, if you're a Fortnite player, you're probably getting more out of this than me, who's never played Fortnite in my life. But I feel like that is less so with this issue now that it's moved off the actual Fortnite island, because now we're just in story. We're just, we're not over in that island. We're not dealing with the, the swirling vortex, the actual battleground, last man standing sort of thing. So where it goes from here, no idea. But I thought the art by Christian Doucet was fantastic. Great line work, beautiful colors. So yeah, continues to be a lot of fun. Continues to sell pretty well with those codes for getting things in the game. So yeah, I'm enjoying it. I don't know. What do you think, Rocky?
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I've never played Fortnite before. I've always been sort of curious. I've seen occasionally in the toy aisle, I'll see these action figures that say Fortnite on them, and they look like interesting characters. And I don't recognize, I recognize them as Fortnite characters, but I know nothing about them. I have to admit, there's actually some characterization of these characters of Fortnite, and to be quite blunt, I still really don't know. I haven't put to memory any of these Fortnite characters' names, to be very blunt, but they're interesting. Some of them are kind of cocky. Some of them seem interesting enough, and I'd be actually curious to get to know them a little bit more if this series. I don't think that'll happen because this is a very Batman centric, as you said. They all look to Batman for leadership, but some of them resent it. There's at least one Fortnite character that sort of expresses, why are we listening to this guy, and I'm not sure which character it is, but it's interesting that they're all working together. I think that if this series had more room to blossom as a story, I suspect that, there'd probably be more conflict, and that I suspect some of these Fortnite characters wouldn't just blindly sit back and let this Batman character lead them. But it's a lot of fun. And I can only imagine that if you're a Batman fan and you play Fortnite, I imagine you'd have a lot of fun watching or reading this, because it is fun. And Batman, I gotta say, Christos Cage here as a writer, the way that they piece it all together, the way Batman and the Fortnite characters work together to actually figure out how to get off the island, there's actually kind of a good amount of detective work here. This was not, normally I would forgive this story if it was just one dimensional, but there's actually a lot of forethought that went into the thinking that Batman did when they pieced this all together. I was actually kind of impressed with it, and even some hilarious moments between, like, I don't even know, it looks like a talking fish and I don't know who the characters are, but there's actually some humor in this issue that I openly laughed at. And the one scene, the one fish character says, the guy the one guy makes the comment that we're obviously all from different locations. Some of us could have come from the same place, but based on the technology and biology, some clearly did not. And of course the fish character says, no offense, but you're obviously not the world's greatest detective or anything. I mean, it was I thought it was actually, it was comical. It was because it is kind of a ridiculous, fantastical setting with these characters from different worlds all battling each other. So obviously some look very, very different. And yeah, I had fun with this. This is a good read. And, like I said, it is what it is. It's a good story, and I'm glad to see it's heating up the spec market. It continues to sell extremely well. I know my retailer is very happy. He can't keep them in stock, and he got rid of all his second printings, and I think he even got the third one for the first issue's coming along. Is going to be getting that in a bit. And so yeah, hey man, anything that brings more, if we can get even a small percentage of the video game crowd picking up comic books in retail shops, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I actually love the line where Batman says to the fish stick, is what he calls himself,
Yeah.
"You can breathe underwater?" And fish stick says, "Again, not exactly a genius, are you? Of course I can. Look at me, I'm a damn fish." Yeah, it's absolutely hilarious. So, all right. Well, moving on to Green Lantern number 3. Number 3. Written by Geoffrey Thorne. We have first half of the issue art is by Tom Rainey. Second half is by Marco Santucci. Michael Attia on colors, Rob Lee on letters. And I did mention right at the top that this was a pleasant surprise for me. Best issue of Green Lantern that Geoffrey Thorne's done so far. But what do you think, Rocky?
Wow. Yeah, the art was a little I had to adjust a little bit to the art at first. Tom Rainey's art's a little bit of an adjustment for me, but what the art grew on me, and frankly the story here, I was impressed by the story. I was a little thrown off initially with the story because it starts off in what the reader will discover that it's actually taken place in his mind. He's actually, there's a chemopath or a telepath character by the name of Sakari that is actually sort of telepathically trying to communicate with Jon Stewart, and then there's sort of it's through the telepathy that this telepath is trying to help Jon Stewart, and she's trying to figure out what happened to him, and that's when we actually continue off from the previous issue. In the previous issue, like issue 2 was a game changer. It established that Oa was essentially destroyed, and not only was Oa destroyed, but it was destroyed just as Jon Stewart and 1,000 Green Lanterns are essentially sent off to the Ghost Sector, or pardon me, not the Ghost Sector, but this new Dark Sector, where they have to, where they got to patrol it. They have to patrol this new Dark Sector. But and when they get to the Dark Sector, we get Jon Stewart. The Dark Sector has a strange effect on Green Lantern rings. Green Lantern energy, the Lantern energy doesn't interact well with the Dark Sector. There's something about it, and for that reason, what they would normally do, Green Lanterns, is that they created their ship. Their ship is actually a giant construct of all their energies, but in order to create a headquarters, they need to use actual organic materials, matter, not energy from their rings, and they're doing that just to be safe because of the effect that this Dark Sector has on their rings, on their ring energy. And so while they're doing that, they create a new headquarters, basically based on those types of materials, and they call it, I guess, the lighthouse. And once they build that, Jon Stewart sends them all off to patrol the Dark Sector, and they all have missions as, do your best. Remember, we're diplomats. If you get in trouble, just, contact, your fellow Lanterns, and we'll, to call for help, etc., etc. Unfortunately for Jon Stewart, he goes out, and for some reason, while he's out on patrol with this mushroom-like Green Lantern, I don't even know what the mushroom's character's name is, but his ring conks out on him,
that's when the battery back on Oa exploded.
Is that what happened? Is that why?
Yeah. I'm assuming that's, we saw that at the end of the first.
And that led to so all the rings elsewhere, everywhere in the galaxy were destroyed.
Yeah, basically. Which is what we saw in Future State, right? Like there were no Green Lanterns.
Oh, okay. I guess that makes... Well, the rings didn't work, but his ring's not destroyed. It just, I guess, loses its energy. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, but the other thing that's not clear to me is, so when did Jon Stewart go back to wearing a regular ring? Because if you remember in Scott Snyder's Justice League, he didn't have a real ring. It was a tattoo. So that's not clear either, but
yeah,
whatever. DC editorial at its finest.
Well, I suppose in fairness, I could have been more on the ball. You figured that out. I think in hindsight, I feel somewhat foolish. I should have maybe made that connection there. But yeah, that makes complete sense. That it probably took a while. It's sort of like it took a while for the energy to disconnect between the destruction of Oa and the rings. It's interesting that, but it wasn't clear in the art, because I thought just Jon Stewart's ring, because I was wondering what happened to the mushroom Green Lantern, or that other lantern. I thought that he just disappeared. Did he die? But I guess he created a fungus cocoon around Jon Stewart that saved Jon Stewart's life. But yep. I guess he must have died then. But he died saving Jon Stewart's life, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. Couldn't say.
Yeah, I mean, it's unclear, because it's like, is he still alive? Is he dead, floating in space? But in any event, he's rescued by salvage drones from this planet, and I never did get the name of the planet. Salvage drones from this planet rescue John Stewart while he's in this fungus cocoon, and he's revived by the Sakari character, and he ends up being on this planet for she sort of revives him telepathically and he's got all these images of his dead wife, and eventually her hair. I'm gonna give writer Geoffrey Thorne some props here. This character Sakari, her hair follicles, her hair is actually what helps her connect telepathically into the brain to brain with other species, and she actually connects through John Stewart's spine, and it's interesting there. So she's some creativity going in there, and I think that was kind of cool. And he doesn't have his ring doesn't work, but so he's on this planet for like 145 days. The Sakari character has a daughter named Ilo, and eventually this planet is attacked by Quinari space pirates, and John Stewart recognizes Quinari space pirates because apparently he's fought them before as a Green Lantern. He confronts them only to be handily, quite easily defeated, almost embarrassingly defeated, and then I guess that presumably at some point they'll take his ring. Now, I remember when you and I and Trevor, when we reviewed Future State Green Lantern, ultimately these Quinari pirates were part of the army that they battled against, and so this is probably clearly building toward that. I think. Meanwhile, I'm more interested in what's happening back on Oa. Frankly, with Sojourner Mulane, the new Mulane, the new Green Lantern, she's basically in. No one else is in control of Oa. The Guardians don't seem to be there. She's the only one at Oa. She sends out a distress call warning all Green Lanterns elsewhere that her ring is still working, but basically telling him don't come to Oa, stay away, and if you do, it might be whoever did this is expecting that most Green Lanterns were wiped out. Stay away to be safe. And she's warning everyone. And what I find interesting is Hal Jordan ends up getting that message. And to your point, Jace, about are all the rings destroyed of all the lanterns? I got the impression that Hal Jordan's ring still functions. Is that because? But Hal Jordan created his own ring, right? Didn't he create it? He created his own ring out of his own willpower. Is that why his rings?
Yeah. I mean, I'm assuming, but then again, it's like they're picking and choosing what they keep because John Stewart no longer has the tattoo ring. He has a real ring that shorts out. But Hal Jordan, yeah, maybe. Don't know. Maybe that'll be explored. It certainly is a possible explanation.
Yeah, and it must be that I'm not even sure. Why does Joe Mulane's ring not?
Well, she says in the story that she thinks it's because she was sent to that far sector that her ring was different.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't read an issue of Far Sector, I think, since like issue 4. I'm still buying them all. I just haven't read it.
Yeah.
But wasn't her ring, didn't it have like a finite, it wasn't like she had to charge it every 24 hours like the others. It had this finite, like they charged it up, this huge amount, and it had a finite amount of power. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, it could be.
I mean, she does mention in the story, either way, she does mention in the story, it is made differently than the other Green Lantern rings. We're assuming that's why it didn't actually have a connection to the battery. And obviously, Teen Lantern has the gauntlet, which is not, it's been established it's not Chrono's gauntlet, but it is different and draws its energy from a different resource as well.
And it can also power a ring. The Teen Lantern's gauntlet can actually power up a Green Lantern power ring, but that's not discovered yet until Future State, where in Future State, she actually helped Mogo, the entire planet-sized Green Lantern Mogo survive through her gauntlet as well. So, and Simon Baz here doesn't have a ring, but he's got a metal arm, and he's got a metal arm and a weapon. So Geoffrey Thorne here is being very creative. I think he's being very creative with what he's doing with the characters. I like that, even though O has been destroyed before, and that's kind of a trope that's been done before. I actually am more interested in Geoffrey Thorne's approach here than I have been in the past when O has been destroyed. I actually kind of like this. I'm curious, and um, yeah, like I say, I'm impressed. I'm impressed, and I like how it ends with Hal Jordan, because it's, for a guy that said he hates Hal Jordan and everyone is getting on his ass. I think he's given some Hal Jordan some good props here, because Hal Jordan is given some status in the final image here of Hal Jordan just there hearing the distress call. I mean, could it be that Hal Jordan might get some Geoffrey Thorne love? Wow.
I thought the same thing when I saw that. I was like, wait, is that Hal Jordan?
Yeah.
Is he going to be the one that saves the day? That would be almost like Geoffrey Thorne flipping the bird to, all the guys who called him out for saying he. And you know what? He kind of brought it on himself. He went out there saying Hal Jordan was the worst comic character ever created, kind of thing, and whatever, fan opinion versus writer opinion is what he said. But yeah, maybe this is his way of saying, no, I really will give Hal his fair shake. So it'll be interesting. I do agree with you on the Tom Rainey art. It pulls me out of the story at times. He's just so inconsistent with his proportions, especially in terms of the size of the head as compared to the size of the body, the size of the features on the faces. He's just not consistent from one panel to the next. I mean, sometimes Jon Stewart looks like a pygmy, and other times his art looks great. So I just wish there was more consistency. And when Jon's in his dream world, he supposedly sees his old ex-girlfriend, classic Green Lantern, Katma 2, who he was married to, and it looks nothing like her, like nothing like I've ever seen her look before. So that's problematic. She needs to be recognizable as who she is. So again, I hope Rainey continues to refine his art, because there are panels where the art is really great, and there are other times where it's not so much. So and I think the planet, it's called Sergalon or Sergalon, is what Sakari says.
Okay. Yeah, I
Welcome,
missed that.
welcome, welcome to Sergalon, and Elo comes flying up on her little Mr. Miracle flight disc thing. He's awake. He's awake. So that was entertaining. Elo was a very energetic character that brought a lot to the story. And Jon a little overconfident at the end there, sort of confronting these Kenuri, saying, "Oh, they're going to see me and they'll run, because I'll just tell them I'm a Green Lantern. They're going to recognize me, and they're just going to take my word that I have power." And of course, they don't, and they basically shock the crap out of Jon. So it's kind of what you would expect to see, rather than Jon, beating thousands of coons like we saw in Future State. So I guess that remains to be seen. I do wonder where the other lanterns in the dark sector are. Obviously, I guess they're having their own struggles. So how they're all going to get back together and regroup is going to be interesting. As is Joe Mullen's quest, right? Like she basically says, no lantern left behind. She puts it out in hyperspace. Hey, we're going to, retrieve every lantern. And even when some of the other members of the United Planets Council tell her that's not really realistic, we're projecting we'll get back like 30%. She's like, do the best you can, and I'll personally go out and get the rest. We're bringing back 100% of these people. So I don't know how realistic that is. I'm kind of with the counselors on this. But obviously she's passionate. She believes everyone should be saved, and I agree. But yeah, how that's going to happen, how it's going to go down, remains to be seen. So this is intriguing. Geoffrey Thorne has pulled me in. This feels big. This feels epic. I certainly hope that we do get a resolution long before we get to the Future State actual time frame. Because I really would like to see this giant story be resolved in, I don't know, 10 or 12 issues. And let's tell something different where there's not this there's just not this dystopian apocalyptic feel for the Green Lanterns, because it's been so long since I feel like we've had a classic Green Lantern book, where it's Hal or it's John or Simon Baz or Jessica Cruz or whoever it is who are out there fighting classic villain. Like, when was the last time that you saw um, some of these classic Green Lantern villains show up? Like a Hector Hammond or um, I can't even think of any others right now. Is it
Yeah,
Black? Who's the Black? Is it Black Hand? Is that
yeah, the
is that what
Black
it is?
Hand and
Yeah, Black Hand and
yeah, or even
yeah,
Atrocitus and even Mongol actually. Well, but he's in Superman now. But
yeah, yeah. Just I mean, we that was sort of the field of the Robert Venditti book, although a lot of that was Yellow Lantern versus Green Lantern. But then we had the crazy out there uh, Grant Morrison series with spectacular art by Liam Sharp, and now we go to this where there aren't even any Green Lanterns except for three, I guess, if you count Hal Jordan, Joe Mullen, and Teen Lantern. So it's like, I'm ready. I'm ready to get back to more of a classic feel of Green Lantern. You would think with the Green Lantern cartoon coming up that they would want to get back to that as well. Although I guess it's still early days. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I enjoyed this more. That they're set up here, and there's a lot of possibility here. But much like you, Rocky, I'm very much more interested in kind of what's going on in Oa than I am with the unpowered lanterns out in space. Um, the Geoffrey Thorne, uh, I guess you'd call it Marines in space, right? I mean, that's the whole thing. John Stewart's a Marine, and that training and what have you, even without powers, like we saw in Future State, he's this, one of the most powerful warriors in the galaxy. Which I'm sorry, I just don't buy that. I just don't. And we talked about it extensively when we covered Future State, with him fighting a warlike race who's been around for centuries, and somehow he beats them. No, that doesn't make any sense. So, uh, but this was good. Yeah, I enjoyed it for what it was. All right, well, on to the last book. It's The Nice House on the Lake, #1, from writer James Tynion. Alvera Martinez Bueno handles the art and colors. Jordi Belair, or I'm sorry, the art and cover. Jordi Belair handles the colors, and World Design does the letters. This was a lot of fun and very different and sort of out there. Um, and just to sum it up really quickly, basically there's some guy, some being, I guess I'll say alien because it refers to this place as their planet, and basically he knows that I think he calls them his people.
yeah.
He
His
knows
name
what
is
his
Walter. His name is Walter.
yeah, his name is Walter, and he says that, so basically he invites 15 people to this nice house on the lake, um, and he picked them all. Only 12 of the 15 show up, and the first night they're there, um, basically the world starts coming to an end. Like, there's firestorms in the sky, people are dying. It's all happening on live stream on TV or texted on or showed up on social media or whatever. He says the 7 billion people out there are dead, or they will be dead shortly. And he brought these. He tried to bring 15. He only 12 responded, and he said, "I wanted to save you from what my people were going to do to your planet." So he says, I created this little world. I created this nice house on the lake, this little corner of the world that was preserved for you to live out the rest of your lives in peace. You won't want for anything. There's food and alcohol and kayaks and boats and entertainment and this incredible house with a beautiful view and whatever. You just can never leave. And one of the people that he invites freaks out, grabs like a fire stick poker and swings it at his head, and it just goes right through him. And he sort of reforms his head, and then uh, just sort of disappears and says, I'll be back. I'll check in on you from time to time. I love you all. And he just sort of disappears. And that's the way the first issue ends. The setup, the first half of the issue is meeting these people. They all have sort of a different designation. One is called the artist, another's called the writer, another's the comedian. We have the scientist, the accountant, the reporter, the acupuncturist, the consultant, the doctor, the pianist, and then Walter, obviously. So it's a very interesting setup. I expect no less from James Tynion. He calls this horror, but I don't know. It feels like horror in the way Twilight Zone is horror, right? Like, obviously, it's horrific that the world's coming to an end, and we may get more horror, but this feels much more like suspense or um, kind of science fiction. And the best kind of science fiction that makes you ask questions and what's real, what's not. And clearly, it'll be a lot about these characters and their interactions and why they were chosen and whatnot, and will they try to escape, and what's happening to the world. And it's a fantastic start to the story. I will say that Alvaro Martinez Bueno's art, it's not as clean here as you might expect if you've seen his art before in things like Justice League Dark. But it very much suits the style of the story. Like, it shouldn't be that clean, and the colors shouldn't be that bright. Because just like I was talking about before, where you expect really bright colors in a superhero story, this is not a superhero story. This is very much something different. And so, a little looser style with his art and having things a little more textured and a little bit more subdued color palette suits the tone of the story very, very well. I am very curious to get more characterization for these different characters and their designations, because we get very little of that. We get their designation and a little blurb about each of them from like Walter's. It almost seems like from Walter's notes or something like that. So who Walter is, what it's got to be some alien type race or different dimension or that sort of thing. And God, I can't imagine. I mean, will they be able to put the world back? Can they turn back time? Is it just? I mean, what do you do if you're in that? This is one of those books where you read and you put yourself in that situation. If you're one of those 12 people, and obviously, I mean, a lot of them have met before, right? But they're not any of them that are. I mean, well, the first girl that we meet, the artist, I guess she was dating one of the other people at one point, but clear that it was never really serious. But you're one of these people, and the world's coming to an end. You have loved ones out there and people that you are close to that you care about. You can't reach them. You can't get a hold of them. Walter tells them they're unable to leave. So yeah, what exactly is going on? Is this an alien race that's coming to terraform the planet to make it suitable for their needs? Is it something similar to that, but with beings from another dimension? Clearly, they're very powerful. So a lot of questions raised, but super intriguing. And the art is gorgeous, especially the color work by Jordi Belair. Very much suits the narrative that's being told here and kind of the mood. So I was reading along. I'd heard really great things because there's been a lot of comic creators on social media that were able to read an advance copy. And that every one of them I've seen talk about it's been like, oh my God, this is so good. This is so good. So I've been anxiously awaiting reading it. And the first half of the issue is kind of set up. And I just kept wondering, okay, when is something going to happen? Because something's going to happen. It's Tynion. But what does happen with the world just all of a sudden falling apart was the last thing I expected. I expected, okay, one of these people in the house is a serial killer or some kind of psychopath or some sort of Jason or Freddy type character shows up in this house and starts stalking them. I did not expect this. I did not expect the whole world to go to hell in a handbasket, basically. And fantastic start. I mean, I can't imagine anybody reading this first issue and not coming back for the second one to try to understand what the hell's going on. So wonderful.
Yeah.
It very much reminds me of like the best Vertigo books back in the day, right? And people say, oh, there is no Vertigo imprint at DC, and it's the end of an era, and it's too bad. Well, this shows that Black Label can still be that, and you still can have creator-owned books over at DC that are innovative and fun and have interesting ideas and tell great stories. And you kind of wonder. You look at that main cover where it's that artist character. You just see her from the eyes up. The rest of her submerged in water, and she's surrounded by skeletons in the water. And there's no context for it. You have no idea why. And then after you read the story, all of a sudden the context of that cover takes on a whole new meaning. So yeah, I was blown away, and yeah, again, between this and Green Lantern and Suicide Squad, they're all home runs for me this week from DC. So, what do you think, Rocky? I think I remember you telling me that you really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I love this. This was really good. It, just it's such a simplistic premise. That's what I love it. The best stories are so simple. And and again, I mean, Tinian keeps doing what he said he would do in his newsletter. I mean, I keep going back to it, but he's keeping these things simple. This is not a complicated story at all. This is a group of people that are brought together by a guy named Walter, who asks at least one of them, the artist, at one point, he chooses these people at different points. Some of these characters he chose 12 years ago, some 16 years ago, some 4 years ago. He even breaks them up into clusters. There's the New York cluster that consists of Ryan, Naya, Arturo, and Rick. There's the high school cluster of Nora, Molly, Sam, and Veronica. There's the college cluster of David and Sarah. And interestingly enough, Walter collects all these people, puts them in this nice house on the lake. They're his friends, and he basically wants to save them. He says, I want to save you because the people where I come from are destroying your planet, but I'm doing this for you. Now's a nice house on the lake, but guess what? By the way, you can never leave. You're going to be here for the rest of your life, so you can never leave. But if it's any consolation, I'm going to come back and visit you once in a while, and we can toast the old world. That's basically it. And yet, strangely enough, there is something horrifying about that. I mean, it's sort of like if I was to criticize religion, criticize heaven. Can you imagine heaven, a place that after you die, it's a party that you go to in heaven, but you can never leave, ever? You got to party forever. You can never leave. I mean, it might sound like heaven at first, but think about it. Okay, nice house on the lake that you can never leave. It's sort of like when I go to an all-inclusive in Mexico. It's like, believe it or not, at the end of a 2-week vacation in Mexico, I actually want to come home. You can get too much of a good thing. But now, and this has taken that and really building on it. By the way, one of the central mysteries here, Jace, I counted the characters. There are only 10. Walter said there was 12. There's only 10. There's the comedian, scientist, writer, consultant, accountant, artist, reporter, acupuncturist, doctor, and pianist. That's 10 characters. That's 10. There's 2 characters unaccounted for. He says that 12, he said 50, he invited 15, but only 12. There's only 10 that are mentioned in this first issue. And I think I've reread this 3 times, and I keep trying to find the 2 characters that I'm missing. Walter would be the 11th, but I don't think he's counting himself as the host. So,
if you look on the cover, it shows all the because they all have a designation, right? The accountant, the artist, or whatever, and they all have a symbol that goes along with that designation. If you look at the cover, there's only 10 symbols on the cover. So you're right, there are 2 missing. I didn't pick up on that.
Yeah.
Until you said that. But yeah, if you look on the cover, right underneath the title, "Nice House on the Lake,"
yeah,
it has the 10 symbols. But yeah, there's 2 that are unaccounted for. And I do agree. I mean, maybe the most horrific thing of all, like it is a never-ending party, like you said, but the world is gone. There's no new television shows. There's no new movies. There's no new comics. Rocky, you want to talk about living in hell? Yeah. Plus, you're stuck with these same, whatever it is. Is it 9 other people? Is it 11 other people? Yeah. There's no. I mean, do you pair up? What about? Do you care about repopulating the world? Is there even a world to repopulate?
Maybe some of the girls are pregnant. Maybe there is 12, but when they're pregnant, that would account for the other 2, the unborn or something.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's possible, but yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, these people don't even really know each other. I can't imagine being stuck with the same 11 people for the rest of my life.
But yeah, it's interesting, and it's interesting how he designates them. Like, why would he categorize it as a New York cluster, a high school cluster, and a college cluster? And they're all kind of the same age. Like they're all between the ages of they're all in their 30s. They range in ages from 32 to 36. So they seem to be very specifically chosen in a specific age range very New York centric. So this guy named Walter. If he's obviously an alien. It's not like he got a huge variety of people from the people of
Yeah.
Earth. You know what I mean?
They're all American.
Yeah, I mean, there's no diversity here. What's going on?
No Canadians, no West Coasters. What are
Yeah,
you
no
doing, Walter?
Canadians. Come on. How can you not have a Canadian on there?
Yeah, fantastic start. Very, very intriguing.
Yeah. No, it's good. Yeah.
Anything else to add, or should we talk about some of the other books?
No, nothing to add. Yeah, just pick up Nice House on the Lake. It's a great read. It's a great read, and I'm very intrigued in terms of where it might be going.
Yeah, there are a couple of other titles coming out that we probably should mention. Let me. Yeah, there is the next issue of the Batman Adventures, which is basically the animated series title that ties in, or doesn't tie in, but kind of lives in that same world. So that is out this week. There's also the final issue of the Manbat series, issue 5, which wraps up that story. There's another DC horror title out this week. DC Horror presents The Conjuring, The Lover, #1. And that one's sort of interesting because it has 2 stories in it. There's kind of a one and done story by Scott Snyder that I thought was pretty fun, if not a little predictable. And then there's another story in there that apparently is going to be a continuing story, which I did not find as interesting. So, but if you're into DC horror, you might want to check that out. It's The Conjuring, The Lover, #1. There's also Sensational Wonder Woman, #4. That's the series that collects the Sensational Wonder Woman digital series in print. So those are some of the other books that you might want to be on the lookout for from DC this week. And then we've got, as far as trade paperbacks, there's the Harley Quinn Black, White, and Red trade paperback that collects that whole series. Batman the Animated, I already mentioned the individual issue of Batman the Animated, or Batman the Adventures Continue, Season 1 trade paperback is out. There's also a Poison Ivy Thorns trade paperback, a Catwoman Soul Stealer trade paperback, and a Crypto the Super Dog trade paperback that are coming out this week as well. So plenty of DC books, a lot of good stuff this week, and especially Nice House on the Lake. We saved it for last because really probably the most interesting and intriguing book, and stands on its own. Obviously, you don't need to read anything else. I thought Green Lantern was excellent. I thought Suicide Squad was excellent. So pretty happy with where DC is at right now, and based on where we were a few months ago with Future State, I got to say I'm this is not where I expected to be. I was really worried. I mean, in a way, it was, I was trying to look at the positives of it. I was spending hardly any money when I was ordering my comics on DC stuff. My comic bill was like down by 50%, but now they're sucking me back into some of these titles. So,
no, it's a great week. I love. My favorite was Nice House on the Lake. And I really enjoyed Batman and Green Lantern this week. Was definitely my favorites, and Justice League Dark. I enjoyed Suicide Squad. Even moments with Lobo and Crush and Lobo, as much as I had some issues with maybe where they're going with Crush. Still, I consider my criticisms to be fairly minor, and I compliments to DC for I credit DC Comics for bringing in the horror comic back. Horror comics are coming back in spades. It's the Black Label, the Joe Hill line of comics. I think DC helped put that horror comics back on the map. Obviously, James Tynion did it with Something Is Killing the Children. He's at the forefront of that, and of course his Nice House on the Lake here is just continuing that. I mean, DC, it's kind of ironic, as much as we all got so critical of AT&T, the corporate mentality of everything else, even though it's sort of ironic. If I would never have guessed that I would be enjoying DC as much as I have, and whatever AT&T has done, and you can be critical of them, maybe they may have fired a lot of people, but I gotta say, man, the creatives that they have kept around, and this new fresh blood of young writers, from Brandon Thomas to Stephanie Phillips to Adams and Geoffrey Thorne, um, all impressive. Like their passion is coming through, and they're putting up with the criticism, and they're putting their head to they're focused. And these stories, there's some good, there's a through line here between all these stories that I think I'm being entertained. And kudos to Ram V, man. Between Ram V and Tnion, wow, boom. Things are flying high. Who would have thought that the worst writer in the entire batch is Bendis?
Yeah,
Really?
exactly. Yeah, and interesting too, because remember, DC was done, right? Oh, DC's done. Marvel's going to end up buying them up. They're going to stop making print comics. They're hardly putting out anything, right? 3
Yeah.
or 4 titles, blah blah blah. Here we are, at the second week in a row where we've been, talking for more than 2 hours because they've got so many books on the stands that are coming out, and good books. So, yeah, definitely in a good place with DC on the upswing. So as we're winding up here, Rocky, anything to tease for the folks coming up this week on the channel?
Um, nothing in particular. I'm going to be doing another top 50, and I'm putting together another top 50 books, and maybe just rant and rave on the state of comics in general. And I might be reviewing some future DC titles that are coming out. But I've got a number of things that I'm working on, but nothing specific right at this moment. No.
Gotcha. Well, like I mentioned at the top of the show, the Jim Starlin interview's up. Highly recommend you guys go and check that out.
That's a
Go and
great
pick up,
interview. Yeah.
yeah, go and pick up Dreadstar Returns. Very, very entertaining story. Also, this week for our Kickstarter Spotlight, we'll be talking to Erica Schultz about her current campaign for the Deadliest Bouquet, which just funded over the weekend. So we'll be talking to her about that. Liam Sharp's Kickstarter is still ongoing and has reached $100,000, which is absolutely amazing. I'm so happy for my friend Liam. So well deserved. He's so humble. He's so hardworking. And really, this is, he's been open talking about it on social media, how this is going to be life-changing for him. And so that's spectacular to see. A lot of interviews coming up. Got some big announcements, some new things coming in the crowdfunding world. I also have a big event you may have seen over the weekend. I tweeted out a picture of some art that I got my hands on from Todd Knock that you can own. So there's a big event coming up that I'll be talking more and more about as it gets closer. That I'm going to be making a ton of art and autographed books and signed copies of comics and all kinds of really cool stuff, some graded comics. All that's going to be made available for you all. So you'll want to pay attention to that. Make sure you're following us on social media. So yeah, there's a lot of great things coming. We're going to have Daniel Sampier on to talk about his work on Aquaman and Action Comics. So that's coming up as well. So yeah, a lot of things in the hopper, keeping me really busy. So be sure you're following us on social media so you know when all that stuff drops. Be sure you're subscribing to the Comic Boom YouTube channel. Make sure you hit that notification bell, like this video. All that stuff helps Rocky and I get more visibility and more access and ability to talk to more creators and bring you guys some great content. So be sure you're doing that. And as always, I want to thank you all for listening, especially when these episodes get a little longer in the tooth with so many books out. But Rocky's always on top of it with those timestamps, so you can jump right to the books that you want to know about. And so we appreciate you listening and supporting us as always, and we will talk to you next time.
Catch you later.
Mm-hmm.